Constellation, Last Stand Media's conversational podcast, is brought to you by you. If you want to learn how to support our podcast network, head to patreon.com/laststandmedia. Greetings and salutations. Welcome back to Constellation, Last Stand Media's conversational podcast. This is episode 3. My name is Colin Moriarty. Today I'm joined by a constellation of guests. 2 people that have been, well, first of all, my co-host, and then a person who's done the show before, and then a newcomer. Dagan, let's start with you, my co-host. How are you today? You're wearing your Daria shirt. Very well done.
I am indeed.
Well, absolutely. I don't think younger people quite get it. That show was so iconic. When I was in high school, I absolutely loved, adored, and worshipped Daria. And I wanted to be Daria so bad. You know? She was so cool. Daria was so cool.
She was like the ultimate art chick, right? Like goth
definitely.
chick, sort of like frustrated with kind of an old soul, right? Yeah, I think everybody liked Daria. That was like a universally appealing, but it appeals to a generation. I've been expecting a MTV/Paramount reboot for a long time. They're rebooting everything, not just Paramount.
They should reboot it as Daria as a mom, which I think would be cool.
That's interesting.
Whoa.
I think you might have something there.
Just advance like nothing's happened. Like her parents are now grandparents.
Sure.
Like her crazy ass dad, her fucking Quinn, her little sister.
Yes, Quinn.
What was her friend's name?
She's right here.
Yeah, her. And she had a crush on her brother.
I forgot her name.
And I loved the brother character. The brother character reminded me of PJ a little bit.
Oh yeah, he was awesome. I like that character. They were such a great. They were just kind of an animated sitcom from the 90s that just
MTV was so
resonated.
cool at that time, man. Daria, Tom Green show. They were doing some cool stuff at the late 90s, like some different
really
things.
were.
120
I just
minutes.
heard of this would have been in the aughts, but apparently they're developing a Bam/Jackass cartoon, MTV was.
Whoa.
But they put it on the back burner. Eventually, I don't think it ever got past the pilot. It's very crude looking. Some guy on YouTube had clips of it, which were really low grade, like looked like he was filming off of his screen from wherever he found it. But I thought that was interesting. Makes sense that they would have been trying to go that direction, but something.
Chris Pontius.
The guys were voicing the characters and everything, but they just
Party Boy, Chris Pontius. He's
they were all in it.
I love when he would just go to Japan or one of these places. Remember when he would just get naked in all these stores? It was so
Rip
funny.
his pants off. He had the tearaway pants.
That was the same era. You're absolutely right. And that was the era of Camp Kill Yourself and all that as well. So like that was the CKY and all.
Absolutely.
So
it's nostalgic.
Yeah, I always loved that name, Camp Kill Yourself. I think is a wonderful name. Absolutely wonderful name. All right, let's get to our guests. Dustin, let's go to you first. You've done this show before, executive producer, Last Stand. Welcome. How are you today, my friend?
I'm doing well. You guys are talking about these boomer shows over here. I know about this show. I never watched it before.
Daria's a boomer show. I think my mom and dad were like 48 when it came out.
Makes me feel even older.
No, well, what's funny about some of those shows when I was a kid is that there were, in the 90s, this is when we started to have these more adult animated shows. And so it kind of, as a kid, it felt like they should be for me. But, you weren't necessarily allowed to watch that. When I was at my grandma's house, Simpsons was not on. King of the Hill. Can't watch that either. Which is unfortunate because now, especially King of the Hill, when I see clips from that show, I'm like, that show is fucking hilarious.
Yeah, King of the Hill is
I need
funny.
to watch that show.
Shout out to, that's Mike Judge, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's way funnier than The Simpsons and some of his other contemporaries at that time. Just way, way fun. I actually liked that show a lot when it was on. I don't think I ever really would try to watch it, but it was always on reruns. They would have like a Simpsons King of the Hill block on our local Fox station when I was in high school. And that was when I would try to watch The Simpsons every day to try to get into it. Like I so desperately wanted to like The Simpsons.
I went through the same thing.
To this day, I'm like, I have no idea why you guys like this. No, just not working for me.
PJ would sit us in front of an episode or two and be like, come on, like, it's awesome. Admit it. And we'd be like, I don't know. I can't get into it.
It's fine. It's
really funny if you give it a chance. It's just, for some reason, it's just not clicking.
I do find the steamed hams meme funny. You guys know about this?
Yeah, I've seen this one.
I think I've seen this one.
It's funny this comes up because I was showing Holly. She's like, I've never heard of this steamed hams thing. I'm like, oh, let me introduce you. And all these different clips and the stuff that people have done. It goes down that YouTube poop rabbit hole that is just very appealing, where nothing makes sense anymore. And that's when things start to make sense, at least for me.
Fair enough.
All right.
Micah.
Yes.
It's good to see you, my friend. Welcome to the show for your very first appearance on Constellation. Micah Watson, Last Dance coordinator, shopkeep, and my lovely fiance. Where is my fiance? I can't find my fiance. I got my Seinfeld reference in finally.
Soon to be my wife.
My wife. How are you? Welcome.
I'm very well, thanks. Dealing with the dogs this morning, as always, but this is a nice break from that. I'm going to forget that they're here for a couple hours.
Yeah, tell us. I mean, I know all about it, but what's going? We basically have an issue where Rush just won't eat. And
he's terrified of Treble.
Because he's afraid of Treble stealing his food, so he stands and watches it. Like, basically, Rush isn't working with a full deck. I'm going to tell you that right now. It's one of my very favorite parts about Rush. I love Rush. He is my boy. We often say, like, he wants to be inside me, basically. That's like how close he wants to be, all the time. Oh, and we mean it like that. And we mean it like that.
Yeah, I understand.
He's my boy. He's like my best friend. He's with me all the time, but he is not very smart. And so that's the predicate. So what's going on with the pups?
Well, so he just, once again, this morning, I'm trying to feed him. I'm keeping Treble away. Like, I'm playing the goalie. I'm keeping Treble away from him. He still won't eat. He's just standing in front of the food bowl. So I, take the bowl away because I got to get ready for this. And then I end up going back downstairs trying again to feed him because I feel guilty having him not eat. So then I fed him by hand and I'm holding Treble away with one arm while I'm feeding him with the other. It's just madness, but this is my life. This is what we deal with every day.
Yeah, he's very strange. Rush is very, very strange. And he's so adorable. He's so friendly and loving. But he is weird. And
he's an eccentric. Why can't you guys just sequester him to another room to protect him? Close the door. Now Treble can't get into devour his food. Can't do that.
He doesn't like being alone either.
Yeah, that's part of it. Yeah, like
even for the whole meal, 5 minutes.
So I've tried. I will take Treble outside. Like, let's go run around the yard while he eats. I'll come back in and he has just been standing there. And by that point, he's like shivering because he was alone.
He's worried.
And I'm like,
and he's worried.
Okay,
and then sometimes he drools while he's watching his food because he's really hot. Like, he's smelling and eating it, but he just won't eat it.
I love that there's just no logic to this whatsoever.
No. It's because Treble is, you met them. Yeah. Treble is an insane dog. And we love her to death. And cute. She's so cute. We always say she's beautiful. Like, she's a beautiful little Boston Terrier, and she is nuts. And she just terrorizes Rush. Like, and Rush we actually, didn't you make a picture of him? Like the memes of the war memes, and it's like a guy's face, and then it's black and white in the background. There's like planes flying and like a bomb explosion and all that. I think you made one of those with Rush.
I did.
At some point, because like that's like he's got PTSD for just being because he was our only dog, and then we introduced this new element.
Sure.
And it's been a long time now. It's been like a year and a half, but and they love each other. Like, they cuddle with each other, they play with each other, but she is just will not leave him alone. So like, if you give them a treat, it's so funny. You split a treat in two and give them each one, she'll eat it, and then Rush will like taste it and drop it to the ground because he doesn't trust it, and then he'll sniff it and eat it. But in that time, Treble will just come and eat it, like off the ground.
This is great preparation for kids, for you guys, for anybody, because kids is going to be so easy compared to this.
Well, yeah, we'll see. Yeah, we talk about that. Who knows? All right. Well, it's good to be with you guys. First of all, thank you out there for your love, kindness, and support of all things Last Stand Media and our new show here, Constellation, which is doing extraordinarily well. And we appreciate all the kind words and feedback we get from you guys. It's a weekly show now. It goes live. What's the new schedule now? Wednesdays, right, Dustin?
Wednesdays.
So Wednesdays it will go live and on Patreon. And the free feed will get the previous episode from the previous week and so on and so forth. So you'll get a week advance on Patreon, patreon.com/lastdaymedia, plus no ads and all the rest for your audio. You can watch us on video, leave us nice reviews on iTunes, and all the rest. You can DM us if you need anything, and bother Dustin specifically on Discord if you want.
Yes, please.
All right, we have an interesting group of topics to go through today. Mike has not done the show yet, so I'd like to start with her. And
Bring
it's
the
like,
deep end.
well, here's this. Well, this is that there's this element. I don't know if I've ever said this before on the show. I might have. When I was a young goalie in ice hockey, I was known for being, believe it or not, incredibly nervous. In fact, I would throw up before many games would just be a wreck. To the point where I'm like, I don't even know why I play this game. You know, like, why am I even doing this? And then, you know, high stakes, well, what seemed at the time, high stakes travel hockey, you know, very high caliber hockey for your age. And I had a coach, and Coach Allen, his name was. And when you're a young kid there, and it's not until like later in middle school and in high school where there's really a starting goalie. And I was both a backup and a starting goalie in that era of my life where you don't really play very much. In this earlier era, you usually split games with your other goalie on the team. So they either go game, or a lot of time they split in the middle of the game. Like, and that's like that's like a very youth hockey thing to do. And so to deal with my anxiety, like my out of control anxiety, he's like, you're playing first, like right off the bat. He would make me start every game. He made me start every single game. Smart. And then he's like, don't. And then when I'd get to the middle of the second period and they would like call me off the ice, I'd be like so relieved. I'd be like, I never have to play hockey again. Yeah.
Until next week.
Oh, dude, the feeling of making that first save and how good you feel, or letting the first shot in. Ooh, it's a killer.
Oh man, that's got to be pretty. But that's got to be an icebreaker, right? That's got to kind of tone down the anxiety once you have that initial game. You know, once the first couple of minutes start, the first save, the first goal,
the first save,
shot.
I don't let up any goal. So yeah, if I let up a goal in the first couple of minutes, I'm really not feeling good about myself. I'm like, oh man, it's gonna be a bad game. Well, we had a technical mishap, probably because Micah and I are using the same Wi-Fi, maybe, although we've used the same Wi-Fi to do the other shows before, so I'm not so sure that that's that. Then our internet went out, actually. So I don't know if you can see it. Probably not. I have a cable from when I lived with my mom when I was waiting for this house to be ready. I needed to connect my computer upstairs to her router, and it's literally, I think, 200 feet or something like that. So it's basically just a crumple of wire that I had in my closet. And then I just kind of tried to free the ends of it as much as I could. And so in the middle is just this suspended ball of whatever. Anyway, Micah, it's not exciting. It's annoying, actually. It broke my flow. And also, I look like I'm homeless. Like, I don't know how else to put it. I just wanted to say that really quick. True. I totally get it. Mike and I actually have to go to our wedding venue tasting tomorrow, and I've got to unhomeless myself in between now and then.
Do you?
I think if I walk into that place, they're going to be like, do you have the sufficient capital to be here, sir?
They did say business casual, so they're not expecting a lot. Right.
My hair just looks insane. My hair I hate my hair. And you're the only person that understands that, Dagan. Anyway.
Oh, yeah. I do.
Micah, what is your topic today for Constellation?
So my topic is quote unquote old man moments. This has been in my mind rolling around because recently Colin and I keep having these conversations where I just say, that's something my dad would have said. That's something my mom would have said. What really kicked it off was that recently we ordered Domino's pizza. And Colin's exact words was that Domino's is a little skimpy with the toppings. Okay. And that's exactly what my friend's mom in high school used to say. She'd order us Domino's, but she'd always say they're a little skimpy with the toppings. And as soon as Colin said it, I was like, this went from being something my friend's mom said to something my, boyfriend said. And it just got me thinking about other things in my life that I have these observations that I then realize are straight, out of my parents' mouths, things that they absolutely would have said to me. We had a debacle with Honey Bunches of Oats with almonds that Colin was very disappointed that there's not enough almonds in it anymore. And it was night after night, like he'd open up this bag of cereal and be saying like, there's no almonds in here, and like counting them. He was like counting out how many he got in his handful of cereal. Like, and they are skimping on those.
Yeah,
like,
I'm telling you,
it's a discernible change. They really have reduced the almonds to almost none. But it's just the more that I encounter these, quandaries, I'm just like, this is my parents coming out. It's my mom. She would take me to McDonald's and get me an apple pie. And every time she'd say they used to be better because they deep fried them. And I had no point of reference for that because I always just had the apple pies the way they are now.
Wisdom.
But I'm turning into that. I bought toaster strudels the other day and I'm like, these are different. They're not as good as they used to be. And it just keeps happening. So I wanted to know from you guys what things in your life are giving you these kind of same moments of pause and then realizing like this is just exactly what an old person would say.
Well, for me, it's I can totally relate. Obviously, Dagan's the oldest of us, but what I've noticed to this point, Micah, recently, and we've expressed it to each other, although I think I've expressed it to you more than anything. It's what I was saying earlier about looking like I'm a homeless person right now is I really have just stopped caring what anyone thinks about anything regarding my appearance, like what I'm doing. I always wondered when I was younger, isn't that person afraid of being judged? Aren't other people judging that person for X, Y, or Z? And you don't want, you just get trying to look right to go to the store or anything like that. I just roll into Publix. However, we went to BJ's the other day. Love it. Just absolutely love the Price Club situation. And I looked a lot like this, and I just feel like that is the emblematic old man in me really coming out. But what was that? What happened at the doctor that was funny with me with the weight, the scale? Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. Yeah, because your exact words were, "I don't buy it."
Yeah,
when they read out your weight, and you asked them to bring in a different scale.
No. Were you serious, or was it in jest?
No, I was serious, and they ignored me. By the way, they just didn't bring in another scale. Yeah, they pretended I didn't say anything at all. I was like, "There's just no way." So yeah, I totally get it. What about you, Dake? How is this turning on in your mind? You're getting up there. You're getting up there in age.
Wow.
Thank you for the stark reminder.
You turn 50 this year.
This year? Yeah. Late in the
year. My
year.
brother is 50 years old.
Dude,
how old's your brother?
Nuts.
Oh, he's 50.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's
crazy talk.
Like, usually it's like you're a little kid's like, oh, how's your brother? Oh, he's 7. I was like, how old's your brother? Oh, he's 50 years old. He's a grown man. Yeah.
I remember turning 20 and being bummed. Like that's 30 years on after. Yeah, I mean, I'm the oldest by a lot. I love this topic, Micah, because it's such good fodder for comedy, but it's also making me feel a little bad about myself. When I saw you email the topic, the very first thing I thought of for myself, which is kind of a almost daily thought for me, and one thing I do, I think you guys are too young for this still, but I'll find myself in a room, again, almost daily, and stop short and look around and be like, what am I doing in here? I know I came in here for a reason, and I don't remember what the hell I'm doing in here. Like, I'll go in the laundry room and just stop and be like, what am I doing in here? And then this probably started years ago. I mean, this probably started in my 30s, but I used to take comfort in the fact that after a beat or two, 9 times out of 10, I would remember, oh, I'm putting towels in the dryer, or I'm getting a roll of toilet paper, or, I'm making toast, whatever it is. Like, what am I doing in this room? But I have to say, I'll be completely honest with you. I'm probably 2 or 3 times out of 10, I just have to surrender now. And I'm just like, I don't even remember. I just have to give up. And maybe 10 minutes later, it'll come to me, and maybe it won't. I don't know. Like, the old age is definitely setting in. That's the big one with me. And then, of course, proposing this question too made me thought of exactly what you said, just becoming your parents, essentially. And but I have to say, you guys are really young for this, with the exception of maybe Colin, because I don't think this whole thing, like becoming my parents in words and manners, really started until I had kids. Seems like as soon as we had our first kid, that's when this whole thing became like, I would find myself echoing everything my parents said, like that whole, like, shut the door. Do you live in a barn? Insert item here doesn't grow on trees. Potato chips don't grow on trees. This doesn't grow on trees. What am I, chopped liver? Like, and it's kind of disturbing because you realize you're not even saying those things of your own accord. they've just been programmed. Like you grew up with it, and maybe your personality is the same way, so you got a little bit of that passed down, but it's just rote. It's like Pavlov's dog. Like you kind of just become your parents. Now, it's funny because that's kind of like the cup half empty perspective, but there is a cup half full perspective with this, because I do remember as a kid getting frustrated with my parents about said topic and actually saying, like, when I become a parent, I'm not gonna do that. Or when I become a parent, there's gonna be food in the house, for instance. By the way, I'll come home from like a $500 food shopping. 20 minutes later, the kids will be like, there's no food in the house. I don't know what to eat. There's nothing to eat. There's no food in the house. And then I automatically revisit my parents' frustration of being, because I remember saying that and thinking that constantly. And then they run off like a list of things that were in the house to eat. And it was just that none of those things appealed to me. The pantry could have been stocked. The fridge could have been stocked. So that's my big one with my kids. But what I celebrate is that there are a couple of things, maybe two things, that my parents did that I don't do. And that's check the thermostat constantly, like lord over the temperature of the house. I don't do that. I'll be the first one to say I have my faults, but if you're hot in the house in the summertime, put the air on. Have a bar mitzvah. I don't care. Have a blast. You know what I mean? If you're cold in the wintertime, crank the heat up to 90. I don't give a shit. You know what I mean?
Very different from our experience. I
don't care. And so I was right. When I was yelling at Dad about the thermostat in the wintertime growing up, I came through on that one. And the other one is the lights in the house, which is probably bad because I could be a little more conservationally minded, but I don't give a shit. Put all the lights on. I don't care. Like, and I think that's because I don't pay the electric bill. Helene does. Like it's one thing that I'm not like, shut the damn lights off. The TV's on. I just shut it off. I don't think I've ever made a comment.
50, it's like 50 lumens or 50 watts or something. It's like, all right, relax.
I always wonder how that translates.
It's a joke for us we bring it up on Knockback is like, I would know the rhythms of Dad coming in and out of the house so much that I would crank the heat up when he was gone. And then when you'd like hear him coming down the street or when the garage was opening, I'd like run downstairs and then put the thermostat back to where it was. And he would straight up come inside from the outside and be like, did you have the heat on? Yeah. And then I would be like, what? And I remember, I know it's very trite now, but seeing that on Family Guy in one of those early episodes was very, I think it might have been in the pilot where it's like the kid is like messing with the thermostat and the dad's like, what are you doing? And then like the neighbor's dad comes in and is like, is everything all right in here? It felt very validating seeing that because I was like, that really was my experience growing up. And I've also
really
said it in my room on Woodland Avenue in the house we moved into, for when I was in high school. I'm telling you, there was no heat in that room. Like there was the baseboards did not work in that room, and Dad just straight up lied over and over again. It's like the baseboards are fine. The baseboards are fine. I bled the baseboards. They work fine. I'm like, Dad, there's no heat in the room at all. It is fucking horrifying in here.
They got away with murder because now you have the thermostat with the built-in thermometer. It tells you what the temperature is outside, tells you what's going to be next week. Like they're so tech. I'm sure our house growing up got down into the low 50s in the wintertime. That's cold inside of a house. So, but yeah, they were really, in our case growing up, it was conserving the oil, right? Because we always had oil heat.
Yeah. And to Dad's credit, he would say to me, put on some clothes. And it was true that I was walking around often in my underwear and a t-shirt.
But you're home.
No, but that's what I totally agree. And then after complaining, you'll love this. After complaining, I never had an air conditioner until I was in high school in my room. And Dad could have went to like Nobody Beats the Wiz or something and got, like some shitty air conditioner or whatever. He gave me an air conditioner, I shit you not, that was from the 1970s. And this thing was so loud that it was, if you put it on, it was all you could do in the room. Like there was no hope of you watching a television show or playing a game. You couldn't focus on the computer. And I'm like, Dad, you're so worried about the power. This thing is probably using $50 worth of power every month because it's from 1972. So no, he didn't. Anyway, I'm sorry. I'm going that. God bless Dad. He's probably listening to this show too.
God, so
he knows
funny.
he can't get through any show without us making fun of him.
We had to throw him under the bus.
God bless him. So I'm curious, Dustin, where are you on this? Because you're a sweet summer child.
For now,
you've
Are
not.
we the same age?
Yeah, you are. You're both.
I'm going to be
sweet
30
summer
this
children.
year.
Yeah, you're both sweet summer children. Now, I remember I turned 30 in 2014, so that goes to show you the distance between us. And 30 is a good year. 30's. In my opinion, I was like kind of amped. I'm like, oh, like I felt like a real adult when I turned 30. But how are you feeling about old man moments? Are you having them? Are you experiencing them? Are you embracing them? Please talk to me.
Yeah, well, some of them I've been doing, and Holly points them out to me. The one in particular that I really have done since I moved out of the house. This is not something I did when I was a kid at all, is that I just have a tendency to check out what's going on outside, Open up the window, take a look at the yard, just make sure everything's fine, look around a bit, and then maybe you go to the front door and you look out that door too. Just look around, what's going on, and I don't know if this is some kind of like protection instinct in my brain, just to know that there's because legitimately sometimes I'm just making sure that there's no shit going down outside. Not that I live in a bad neighborhood or anything, but I just like to, see what's going on. I'm not spying. There's no neighbors in particular that I'm looking at or anything like that. Just, just look out the window, just see what's going on. But so
I like it. I appreciate that.
Just check out the yard, if there's some kids out there. Oh, I started doing something recently with the kids. There's these loud kids at the bus stop near my house. And sometimes they'll be playing around outside later at night. And I heard them the other day, there's a stop sign by my house. I think they were trying to throw rocks at it. And so I have a little Ring camera and it has a siren sound on it. So I started turning on the siren and then they would all just go running. So if they start fucking around outside my house, I just turn on the siren.
Wow, dude.
That's old man, dude. That's awesome. Love that.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
I feel like that's the age, Dustin, where you start to get leery of teenagers. But I have to say, as I've gotten older, that has softened completely in the opposite direction. To like my sympathy and my empathy for teenagers is at an all-time high. I could write anything off. Like those kids are walking down the street with a submachine. I'm like, they're kids. Like let them do. They're fine. Like so it hardens for a while, and then in your 30s, it's gonna maybe your 40s, it'll start softening a little bit, and you'll start because I think you want to be young again. Right. So that empathy just
so
at
you
least
can
for me,
also have the submachine gun. So you can also
yeah, exactly.
Let them have their fun.
True.
And I feel like oh, good.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, like, I am right now very afraid of teenagers, and literally, I was at 7-Eleven getting gas, and I really wanted a Slurpee, and I look, and there were all these kids with bikes at the front door, and I was like, not doing it. I got back in my car and I left. I was like, I'm not gonna have these kids clowning on me. They're gonna make fun of something. I'm just not doing it. So I just flat out avoid teenagers at all costs.
I thought about that because I think that I was actually at Chipotle last night and there were some teenagers behind me and I thought that I maybe heard them say something. And this is maybe just me, like Micah, being worried about them making fun of me. And I was thinking to myself, as this guy's making my burrito, I'm like, what would I do if a teenager made fun of me and my wife right here in Chipotle? What do you say to him? Like, do you threaten? You can't threaten to beat him up.
You can't.
Like, you can't. You go to jail.
No.
So what do you do?
World star.
So this is something I recently contemplated. But as far as the getting, being old, being like your dad or whatever, I find as like you guys, when you're a kid or you're a teenager, you find your dad or your mom, whatever, they do embarrassing things, whatever. They have what you feel is lack of self-awareness and to some extent. And as I get older, I just desire to have less self-awareness like my dad, honestly. My dad does not give a fuck. Not in a negative way, in a way that he just, certain things he doesn't care about. And this happened recently as a very specific example is that for Christmas, I got him a brewery tour in Pittsburgh. So you go on this, they have like a van, they take you around to these breweries, whatever. So we're waiting. Nice. It starts in a hotel lobby and we're standing around, we're checked in or whatever. And there's some other people there for the tour, but it's like that awkward thing where you're about to spend 3 hours with these people you don't know. So no one's really standing around talking to each other. We're just kind of standing there. My dad takes about 5 or 6 steps away from the group and then just promptly rips ass out loud. And he looks at me and his eyes get wide for a split second. And I am trying at this point, it's very little embarrassment. I just think, oh my, I can't believe he did that. Like, I can't believe it. And I texted, because we have a group
I would
chat.
break down laughing if I was around.
So
that would be
funny.
awesome. Yeah, go on.
I texted Holly and my mom, and we're in a group chat, and I'm like, I explained to you what he just did. And he responded, he said, just all it said was, wasn't supposed to come out that way.
That's the risk you take.
Here's the thing is that if I was a teenager, that would have completely mortified me. Like I would be like, I can't do this tour anymore. I mean, I would have, but I would have felt mortified this whole time. But now as an adult, I'm like, man, I want to do that and not feel ashamed about it. I couldn't do it. I feel too weird, but I kind of want to.
Split the difference. You go crop dust in a supermarket. It's empowering.
Yeah. Oh, dude.
Tell me it's not empowering to walk down the bread aisle and just fart.
But that's not quite the same thing, Colin. I'm in agreement with you. But do they know it's you?
You got to work up to that.
Yeah, you got to work up to that level of courage in the meantime.
Deadly.
You become one of the when you crop dust, you're one of the culprits. But when it's audible, you're the target. So you're working up to that.
Yeah. Yeah. So my dad wasn't intentionally trying to assert dominance in front of the brewery tour group by farting out loud. He ended up doing that, without a doubt. But yeah, it's that level of just not caring about certain things. Like my dad, he'll just one time when we were moving into this house, we were eating pizza, moving in. He got a phone call and he just left. He just was like, oh, hold on. And he put his piece of pizza on the kitchen table and then walked away to get the call. Just left it there. Like, whose pizzas? It's just on the kitchen table. And then we were discussing how funny it was. And then he came back and just picked it up and took a bite like nothing happened. It's sometimes these minor moments too of just like, yeah, fuck it. It's just the table. It's fine, Yeah. But I don't know. I am finding overall, I feel good about these moments of feeling like my parents overall, just because I don't know. It comes with that understanding of when you get older. It's like, oh, now I understand this is why they were the way they were. Hopefully, I mean, in some people's scenarios that might be bad, and if you have that negative connotation with your parents. But for me, it's felt enlightening overall.
Micah, where are you on this? What are you feeling in terms of your old manishness?
No, well, what Dustin just said, there are ways in which it's very endearing. Like my dad is definitely like my best friend, and we call him Nature Bob. He's always out like ice fishing and stuff like that. And I notice myself though getting really excited about nature. And like I'll see a heron in the neighborhood and I'm like, oh, like I'm pointing out to Colin, like, look at that, it's like really cool. Or there was a turtle in our backyard, like back in the summer.
Boxy.
And I was boxy. And I was flipping out about this turtle in our yard. And I've always liked nature, but I definitely just see myself more and more turning into my dad of like, I was texting my family to tell them about it and how excited I was, to see like a random bird or something. But like, I want to like really clarify the thing about the toaster strudels is not that I've gotten older and that my tastes have changed. Like they are fundamentally different than they used to be. It started a few years ago when they made the frosting packet smaller. That's when they first started to aggravate me.
You don't fuck with the frosting
was still
packet.
The same. Because the thing is, they made it smaller, but it was still the same. And there's a thing now, you used to be able to doodle with the frosting. Yeah. And like the design would stay for a minute before it melted. The frosting is now fundamentally different and it melts like on contact. And you can't do the zigzag lines or the swirlies anymore. Like it just turns into goo like immediately.
Unacceptable.
And when I was a kid, I used to spread it with a knife anyways. So like that wasn't the problem. But it's just not the same. Like it's literally not the same product anymore. And it's just bothering me to no end.
It's like what happened with the EL. It's what happened with EL fudge.
Absolutely. And every time I acknowledge one of these things, though, I just realize I'm old enough to have experienced things changing. And I don't like it. I don't like it one bit. Yeah,
that's interesting. You and I being, distant almost a decade. I love this idea of surprising you with things where it's like, I think we were talking about Febreze or something, where I'm like, I literally remember Febreze coming out. Like that, but like there's this ever-present product of Febreze for you.
Or
And-
the glass peanut butter jars.
Right, I
I've
remember
never
that too.
seen one in my life.
Yeah,
I've
I remember
never
that.
seen peanut butter in glass. That's a thing for you.
Yeah, and mayonnaise and other things too. All of it came in glass when I was a kid. Ketchup was like the only thing that always came in plastic. Like you could get ketchup in glass still, but that always was in plastic in my life. But like we weren't hitting the fucking 57 at the,
But we didn't have squeeze, right? It wasn't squeezed necessarily.
No, it was just like some thick plastic thing, and you just held it upside down and hoped for the best, as I remember it. But it's interesting. I have embraced like Dagan, like all of us becoming our dads a little bit in some ways, and we're going to talk about it with my topic. I've really embraced my father, but in other ways I haven't. Like some things actually, the older I get, the more aggravate me that I was subjected to it. The air conditioning and the heat thing is one of them. And the other, and the lights to a degree is another, but to me, and I've said it before, it's just the paper towel shit. Why were paper towels looked at as if it was sheet gold? Like futures commodities of metals or something like that. It's like when breaking out, like you couldn't use paper towels. Like they were just there, but you couldn't use them. You weren't allowed to use paper. And so I flippantly use paper towels. I don't give a fuck.
I'm the same way, dude.
Yeah,
it rubs off the same way.
And it's the highest quality Bounty every time. I go for the Bounty every time. I want the best paper towels. No, I don't even buy napkins because I think napkins are used. I use paper towels. I hate napkins. They're worthless. Just use paper towels. And that's like a subconscious rebellion against dad. I think is like I'm using the paper towels. I'm using.
I think that's what it is.
But in other ways,
he
was very wise in many ways. But in that, I look back and I'm like, things weren't that hard, right? Like we could afford a roll of paper towels a week, I think. Like I think we were okay. I don't remember it being that crazy.
Yeah, being thrifty kind of crossed over into absurdity.
And to this day, our dad was a produce guy and a produce manager at Walbaum's, which is a defunct Long Island supermarket chain. And he worked there in the 70s, 80s, and into the 90s. And he had these, probably in the 80s, brought home like reels, like rolls of these plastic produce bags. The produce bags that you would pull down. And he still uses those bags to this day.
So
probably 55-year-old plastic.
Now, you're bringing up the dad thriftiness. And I think this is a universal thing, but mine was in different ways. And actually, it might not be different at all because I'm wondering if this is the same for you guys. For us, my dad had some kind of magic ability to make a tube of toothpaste last about 3 additional weeks after it was empty. Like he could stretch that thing out and then he squeezed like a tiny, it was like half of a pea size. He's like, oh, there's still plenty in there. And it just kept going. I'm like, there's nothing left. But somehow, I would say it was empty, but he would somehow get like a tiny bit more. Or so I guess there's another one in that same vein is that with bathroom soap, when it started to get towards the bottom and it like the straw wasn't long enough, you just fill that sucker up with water. You got a whole nother set of soap ready to go. Ready to go. No problem.
That's a dad move for sure. Yeah,
total dad move.
It's a good one.
Yeah, I feel in some way I feel blessed. Like I'm not financially strapped. I don't have to make decisions like that. But I would contest no one has to make decisions like that. I don't care how hard up you are about it. Go get the new toothpaste tube.
Yeah.
Get what you can out of it. I certainly get what I can out of it, roll it up and all of that. But at some point you got to let it go. And I
don't hurt your fingers. Or anything.
It's hard to let it go when you feel like there's more to be wrought out of it. Like, there's probably more, but you're like, you got to move on.
Just let go.
Because your time is also valuable.
Yeah.
In my opinion. All right.
Good point.
I'll say this. I thought, Micah, you would appreciate this, especially being that we live together. And we're going to talk about our experiences owning houses as well, because I want to talk to you guys about that today, and we'll get to that later. But my ultimate old man move where I don't care what anyone thinks about me because I know people would look at it and be like, that person is crazy, is me hand sweeping the street in front of my house. But there's a reason I do this. Okay. I'm clipping things. I'm pulling weeds. There's dirt everywhere. I'm mowing the lawn. Right. And then I get it all together and all tight. And then I blow my driveway into the street and my sidewalk in front of my house into the street. But then instead, at that point, it's like, isn't it kind of a dickheaded thing to just be like, and just fucking spray it all over the street and then just leave? And there are people in my neighborhood that just do shit like that, which is fine. But I push it into the street and then try to sweep it into some sort of pile and get rid of most of it. But I know I don't see anyone else do this, and I'm not judging anyone else for doing it or not, but I know that would be something I would see someone doing. And like, that motherfucker is sweeping the street again. Like,
well, you also tried to clean the oil stain.
Right. There was an oil stain left by there was a oil stain left by like a truck that was working on our pool. And I hate these motherfuckers. Our old pool company. Our new pool guys are great, but the old pool guys fucking suck. Hate those motherfuckers. Hate them. And there's like a big oil stain in front of our house. I'm like, that looks like shit. And I was out there like scrubbing it by hand, like trying to get it out of the street.
Where they put on cat litter or something to help absorb it?
Dawn works really well.
Right. Cuts the grease.
And it went away eventually, like just by being bombarded by rain and whatever, but erosion. But I was just, so that's the way it goes sometimes. But I'm not going to push it as far as our dad did. I'm not going to do it. Because dad would do that exact thing, but he would do it in Daisy Dukes.
Oh, yes, he would. And
at least I have and work boots, and at least I have the decency not to do that. So
yeah, embrace it and sort of celebrate the ones you were able to dodge, but embrace the shouting at clouds old man thing. It's going to happen, to everybody in different ways.
I try to be. I say this to Micah, like, well, we walk around we walk our dogs several times a day, and we run into, there's so many kids in our neighborhood, teenagers, children. And I just try to be friendly so as to not be the target, like to be like, hey guys, how you doing? Or, I just try to be, and I think I have a good rapport with the neighborhood kids. Like, I think they actually like me, and we have a friendly, the older teenage kids, like in one side that they're always hanging out. I don't think they're going to like come and jump me or anything like that. I think everything's okay with them, but I have to kind of play that character in order to inoculate myself from being judged as an old man by these children, because I would certainly judge me. And Mike, to close this topic, I wanted to ask you, I thought this was serendipitous because you and I love the commercial series of Not Becoming Your Parents. What is that for?
Is it Progressive?
Progressive, yeah, insurance.
Yeah, new homeowners.
Yeah, that's a really good one. So was that what inspired this?
Partly because it was when we saw the commercial where the guy was cleaning the trash cans and they were like, you wrote your address on these. And it reminded me of how you had the conspiracy that someone switched our trash cans.
Yeah.
Because you had written our address on the trash cans, which I didn't know. And I laughed at that a lot. And then you thought that someone switched them out because the address was gone. And then you were convinced that the trash can was smaller than it used to be. And like, it was this whole thing though, of like, I think someone swapped our garbage bins. And it's like, I don't know how to deal with this. I just don't know what to do.
That happened to me. Yeah, that definitely happened to me.
Oh,
yeah.
Did it? Tell me about it.
Do you remember that? We talked about it on Knockback. This was years ago. Yeah, I had a neighbor who they've been in the house longer, so they had the same exact bins as us for garbage and recycling. But they had been in the neighborhood a lot longer, so their bins were older. And his recycle bin was like full of shit, like mildew on the outside and stuff like that. And one day, in the place of my emptied recycle bin was his, and mine was nowhere to be found. And our houses are way too far apart for that to happen by accident. And I was never able to. I always wanted to switch them back, but they were retirees and they were both always home.
So they got it right away.
I was never able to switch it, and then they moved. So now it's a whole different neighbor. So I still have that shitty mildewy recycle bin. And mine was brand new. It was like 6 months old. It was so clean. I was so good with just putting clean recyclables in there. I would rinse everything first. This guy was an animal with his recyclable. You got to put
the what do they call those? The air tags. You got to air tag. Oh, yeah. Air tag your garbage.
I like the idea of just taking a Sharpie and writing the address in an inconspicuous place.
I did that, but then it like the ones they're gone. So either someone switched them out, or my theory is that maybe the water, but it was a Sharpie.
Yeah, it was a Sharpie. That shouldn't happen. Yeah. Huh.
Next time I got to use Kingford. I got to step it up.
Suburban battles, my friend. It's a battlefield out here.
What smells better than a Sharpie? Kingford. Oh my God. Kingford is so good.
I forgot
Knock me
about those.
Knock me out with one of those, dude.
OG graffiti markers, right?
Yeah.
Fat tip.
Very good.
Good
All right.
stuff.
Micah, are you satiated with your topic before we move on?
Oh, absolutely. This was fantastic.
That was
All
so
right, my
fun.
dear. Thank you for that. All right, let's move on. Let me look here. Well, I guess I'll go next because we were talking about home ownership and we've been talking about it. I've wanted to talk about this for a while because I have no one to really talk to about this stuff. And I feel like I can talk to our parents have done it so many times, the older generation and all the rest. Oh, I see Kiki in the background, dog sighting. Yes.
Oh, she's in there?
Yes.
Geek, we got you on camera.
Love it. But I have become a really persnickety homeowner. And there are some things that I've just let go. Like, for instance, the dogs have destroyed pretty much 50 or 75% of all of the molding in the house, right? Like just absolutely obliterated it and just no hope of it. I got to get it all replaced at some point. But generally speaking, since buying this house almost 3 years ago, it's kind of changed my life and become a major component of my life. And I couldn't imagine not having that reality and owning a house. In other words, I don't know how you would own a property and not be kind of all consumed by it. Dagan, I know you're this way as well at your house in the Philly suburbs, and I want to talk to you about that. Sure. Micah, you experience it as well as we are together in this house. So I want to talk to you about it too. And Dustin, I want to go to you first though, because I know you also own a house. And this is why I needed to do this topic here, because this is the perfect combination of homeowners in our LSM group. How does owning a home consume or not consume your life? Does it take up a lot of your time, energy, bandwidth, etc.? And how do you deal with it?
Yeah, home ownership, I feel like it is one of the best things about my life over, like, I don't know, that sounds weird. I guess one of the best switches I've ever made in my life, from renting a place to owning a place. The benefits are so high. Particularly, not that the apartment I lived in before this house was horrible or anything. It's just like when you have someone living so close in proximity. For our apartment that we used to live in, we were on the second floor and there was like an old couple that lived in the floor below us. And so it was fine. In fact, we probably had a fantastic situation compared to what a lot of people deal with who live in apartments. But when you finally have your own home and you're able to not worry about if something's too loud or if you're stepping or, making noise, whatever, or having to deal with parking situations or stuff like that. It's just all of that minor anxiety can go away. But with that, owning a home for me, I feel like it's been difficult in that it totally brings out a side of me that I'm not good at. And a part of me that's also feels somewhat sensitive, because what's frustrating is that I know how to do very little home improvement stuff. And this house is very old. This house was built in the late 1800s. So
oh, wow.
It's a very old house. And this house has been with my family for a very long time. My parents bought this house in 2002. And they lived here for a long time, obviously. And then they moved to Virginia. And when they moved, they sold the house to Holly and I, which was fantastic. So this house has a lot of meaning, but it also has a lot of upkeep and things that need fixed. And that's never been me personally. And it's frustrating. And I'm not normally the type of person to talk about these types of things, but there's this idea that like, oh, you're a man, you should know how to fix stuff around your house. And if you don't, what's wrong with you? I'm like, listen, you don't know that if there's something wrong with your phone, that you just need to restart it. You can't do anything on your computer. I can fix anyone's computer. I have other skills in life, but installing a new window is not one that I'm especially good at or know how to do. And I've tried to not be close-minded about these things. I have tried to learn stuff. Like last summer or the summer before, a big project is that we had to do new like drains for the gutter, that we had to dig out part of our backyard and put in the thing with all the gravel and stuff like that. And so I always do try to make it a learning experience so I can be more equipped. But like I said, it is often preying on, I guess, an insecurity of mine. There's so many home improvement and home fixing stuff that I just don't know how to do. What's nice is that I have a lot of people in my life that do know how to do these things. My dad is fearless when it comes to these things. If it can be almost any project, and he'll spend 20 to 30 minutes on YouTube or reading something online. I'll be like, all right, let's go to Home Depot. Let's do it. And he just figures it out. And you know what? Sometimes that may backfire slightly, or we need to take multiple trips to Home Depot because we didn't realize we needed this, or this slightly went wrong or whatever. But ultimately, through that process, not only does he not know how to do so much stuff, but it also has saved him thousands and thousands of dollars from not having to hire people to do stuff. And I don't know, I wish I had, and I guess this goes into Micah's topic also, is that I wish I had that level of fearlessness when it came to fixing stuff, because my immediate response is like, oh, I'm going to screw it up. I don't know how to do that. Why would I try to do that? I don't know how to do it. So I don't know. And that probably has saved me in some situations where I've seen my dad attempt stuff that I'm like, you don't have a chance in doing this. And most of the time he actually does figure it out. There's a few times that he's screwed up. But so, yeah, owning a home, and it's tough too, just in that I feel like it was a great decision that really enriched my life, owning a home and being able to have that consistent thing and that sense of responsibility. And so I want to encourage a lot of my friends that don't own homes to do it, but the market was just so screwed up these last few years. And that's also another annoying part. So I've rambled a lot, but overall, owning a home is fantastic. I recommend it.
Yeah, it's funny. I like what you had to say specifically. Well, first of all, the last thing you said about recommending it, I feel the same way, where I'm eager to tell people to buy homes, but it is becoming more and more unrealistic. Like when you look at the adjusted, like inflation adjusted prices of housing, and you hear stories of people that bought houses for $40,000 or whatever, and it sounds unthinkable, but even when you adjust prices like that per date and all of it, it's still so much cheaper than what people pay for houses today. And Micah and I marvel at it. I bought my house, in 2020, and it's probably gone up in value, in quotes value, like 40%. Like that. Yeah, they were advertising homes in my like, because they're still building out most of where I live, and like it's just going to be going on for years. And they've been advertising homes in these different places for substantially more than I paid for mine, like the same houses. Sometimes like townhouses and condos and things like that. I'm like, man, oh man, like it was another. It just reminds me that for all the bad timing that's happened in my life, I've been subject to a lot of good timing too. I think about leaving California when I did, like right before COVID, and then, which was obviously unintentional, or did I know? And then maybe I knew. And then buying my house when I did, just because I was like, well, fuck it. COVID's in my mind, I was like, COVID's going. It's not going to get any better than this. Like, I gotta go. And it ended up being, because no one wanted to do anything. It was like all the virtual shows and all the different stuff. I'm like, no, man, I bought my house in hours. I was like, fuck it, let's do it, dude.
Remember that.
I was just, I actually, the realtor, he's a realtor, has worked with our whole family, like on many of our housing things over the years. And he was like, dude, that was comically easy. Like I was with him for like a half an hour, probably. I was like, all right, this is fine. Thank you. Okay. So Dig, I want to talk to you a little bit about your experiences owning a home. I used to make fun of, so I've really come to relate to your experience, because I used to make fun of you, as I often did, about a lot of different things. And one of the things I would make fun of you about was your sheer very persnickety nature about your house. You live in a beautiful house, and I would just be like, you're so obsessed with everything with going on with the house. But immediately upon buying my house, I totally understood that it became a component of my life that required attention, unlike the many years in California and in Boston of living in apartments where I was like, I don't know, I don't give a flying fuck about this place, to be perfectly honest with you. And I'm going to, I treated it with respect, but I'm out of here. I'm bye. And
exactly. It's not yours.
Yeah, exactly. That's part of the deal. And so you sacrifice in the other direction, and now everything becomes your problem. And I think about that all the time, like with the molding, although that would have been my problem in an apartment because my dogs did it. I'm just like, oh my God, this sucks. Like, this is a brand new house. Like, this is a brand new house, and you guys destroyed shit already. And I have to deal with this. So talk to me about your experiences over the years and how you've lived the homeowner lifestyle.
Yeah, you never really know those sentiments until you go from renter to homeowner. That's the only way you really learn, right? It's been an interesting journey for me. I think the old classic adage for me, where I'm at now, definitely applies. It's always something. For every project you check off the list, another 2 pop up. It's 1 step forward, 2 steps back. And that's okay. You know, there's positives to that. That's part of the journey. But it made me feel nostalgic because Helene and I bought our first house in 2004. So it's been almost 20 years as homeowners now. And our first house was interesting. I never really appreciated it at the time. But the first home we bought, we were really fortunate because it was only 5 years old at the time. It was a relatively tiny house. It was only like 1,500 square feet, but it was relatively new. The interesting thing is we were the third owners in that time. And we bought the house from a family that we kind of knew because they owned a popular Italian restaurant in our neighborhood. And it turned out they were selling the house in order to open up a second restaurant. And so we already kind of knew them, and our real estate agent was a family friend. So it was kind of this circle of, you know, like it just worked out. It was kind of easy, the whole transaction. And then when we got into the house, it was new. So then Helene and I, being young in our 20s and starting out, we were able to put our emphasis onto furnishing a house. We never owned a home. We had small apartments in Philly and stuff like that prior to that. So we really didn't have anything. So we had to kind of start from the ground floor and get, you know, the bedroom set, the dining room furniture. We had to furnish a living room. We had to get all this stuff for outside, the grill for the deck and everything. So having that new house initially really benefited us because we didn't really have to do anything to the home itself. The bones were good. Obviously, everything was new. The plumbing, the electrical, everything was fine. When we bought our second house, we had that home for 5 years. And then when we bought our second house, we had some transactions with building a home that fell through and everything like that because of shoddy workmanship. And then we found a home. It was 2012 when we moved in here. And the home then was 25 years old. It was built in 1988. So do the math. And when we got into this house, it was a whole different ball of wax. Beautiful neighborhood, beautiful home, great school district and everything. But we knew going in, this was an older home. In fact, I knew going in that we had to put on a new roof, for instance, which we did like 6 months after we moved in. So major projects. And that was kind of the thing of buying an older home, making the decision to buy an older home and knowing that, kind of celebrating the fact that we could kind of do our own thing and make it our own, but also lamenting the fact of like, all right, we're going to have to spend a lot of cash over the next probably decade in updating the house. You know, this is a house from the 80s and it's been an adventure, you know, it's funny for me because what Dustin was saying kind of resonated a lot because I'm the same way. I'm not handy. Colin and I laugh at that a lot because our dad's like the handiest dude. Like he's a master carpenter and he has those facilities to just do anything. He builds decks, you know, everything by himself. He could do almost anything. And the apple fell very far from the tree. Not only in terms of skill, but in terms of interest.
Right, exactly.
Like, there were many times growing up where
Can you
he was
imagine
dad lamenting
his two sons, like what he got? These are his two sons.
Just sighing like and just shaking his head like, oh man. He tried to impart that knowledge and the skill and everything like that, but they never really took.
Did. Yep, that was our fault.
But the thing is, though, I don't have the skills, but I am willing. It's a funny way that it works out for me because I am inherently very lazy, but I also have an extremely guilty conscience. So if I'm not proactive and I don't take care of the house and pay attention to things and try to have, you know, go to Lowe's and Home Depot and do the things myself, I'll feel so terrible about myself that it's not even worth it. So I have to kind of get past my laziness by that guilty conscience actually helps me a lot. That Catholic guilt And so I do things and I'm proactive, but I do find we've been in here for 10 years, over 10 years now, and there's a lot of home improvement. Helene's great with decorating, and she's also really kind of intrepid about taking on projects. It's embarrassing to say, but she's probably handier than I am. She's just better at thinking through things in 3 dimensions, which I'm not. I'm very much a 2D artist. Like, I'll draw it, but I can't really think it through in perspective and stuff like that. That's her thing. So I have her, so that's good. And she also has a great work ethic, not lazy at all. But I do find that frustration sometimes of like, all right, a couple of years ago, we put in new floors in the entire downstairs, new hardwood floors, expensive. Obviously, we had to hire somebody to do that. I don't do it myself, but now it's like, all right, now look at the upstairs. You know what I mean? So you feel accomplished, but at the same time, all those lingering projects that you haven't gotten to yet sort of bear themselves out and reveal themselves and make you feel bad about not being able to. And, you fall into that keeping up with the Joneses thing too. I think in any neighborhood where it's like, oh, so-and-so's landscaping looks immaculate. Like, I have to keep, like, they're going to think badly of me. So you have to keep that sentiment on the periphery a little bit, because everybody's dealing with different resources, different time management and all that kind of thing. But that is kind of a bugaboo that I'm constantly like, I don't know. Helene's like, you're so Long Island. Like, you're so into what this guy has and what they're doing and stuff. And I think that is a big part of like my suburban upbringing, like just being aware of what everybody else's stuff looks like, so-and-so's, they got new garage doors or whatever. I want to keep up. I want my house to look good too, that type of thing. So it could be a bad thing. It could be a good thing. But every contractor, every project that I have in, my whole philosophy now with the house is, I don't want to do this again. Like, Helene and I, that's the other thing. You guys might be able to offer some advice with this. That's the other thing we're kind of up against at this point, because we're in a lovely home and I'm very grateful, but it's not our forever home because Helene and I want to be near the water. We're in Pennsylvania, we're in suburban Philly. Whether that means moving down to Charleston or Savannah eventually down south, or the Jersey Shore, or back to Long Island, whatever it is. Hey, we want to be we know we're not going to be here forever. So we're kind of always between a rock and a hard place with, all right, how much, for instance, getting a pool. Do we do that? Because we know in 10 years, we're going to put the house on the market. So I tell every contractor, like, I'm putting in windows. I don't want to think about this again. When I put the house on the market 10 years from now, I want the windows to I don't want to have to revisit this. I'm putting on a new roof. That's it. I don't want to touch it again. So that's really my whole bent with this house is like, I'll do the project. I'll spend the money. I'll spend the time, which usually I don't spend the time. I'm usually spending money. And Helene will spend the money too. And I just don't want to think about that again. Let's really authentically cross that off the list, because don't give me windows that are only good for 10 years, because 10 years from now, when I'm putting the house on the market, I'm going to have to revisit this whole thing and spend all that money again. It doesn't make sense. So that's where I am in my life with, we know we love the house. We want the kids to finish school here. Helene works in this school district as well. So she's got to retire here. And she's at least she's like 15 years from retirement age, right? She's a little younger than me. So we have to kind of hold on. But that's really the big thing, is that I never feel completely satisfied and satiated, because once a project's done, I know there's 3 more on the list. And once those are done, 3 more things are going to be ready for updating. So really what we should have done was bought a slightly newer house about 5 years ago, which we almost did. But that would have been a much higher mortgage for us now. Staying here, we were able to refinance. The mortgage payment is pretty reasonable. We would have had a much bigger economic burden had we moved to that bigger house with the pool and the grotto in the backyard. I remember the exact house because I kind of lament not moving on it back then. But at the same time, I'm kind of glad we did. I'm kind of glad we stayed here, knowing that even that newer house, we weren't going to stay. We weren't going to stay in suburban Pennsylvania. That's not where we want to be. So I guess we're kind of reasoning it out. Like, how far do we take things? The pool is a great example. And how far do we just say, let's just live with it the way it is because we know eventually we're going to be moving, you know? So it's been, but I love it. And, you know, coming from renting and thinking back to places in the suburbs, I lived in Connecticut for a while outside of Hartford and spent 5 or 6 years in Philly in different roach infested apartments. Like the free, like Dustin was saying, the freedom and the autonomy of owning a home and, you know, being the king of your own castle or queen, as it were. Yeah, it's awesome. And, you know, I'm also a mark for the suburbs. I love the suburbs. A lot of people, you know, take that I don't want to say hipster stance. Well, a lot of people authentically love the city, but, you know, a lot of people make fun of me for that. But I really do. Like, there's something about the suburbs that I really kind of enjoy. I guess it's a little bit of a love-hate thing. But authentically, I don't think there's anywhere else I would rather be until we're ready to move closer to the water, maybe be a little further removed from neighborhoods, you know, where it's maybe a standalone house on acres and stuff like that. God willing. So, you know, that's the other thing that I find. And, you know, I could relate to my kids because they grew up in only 100 miles away in a very similar suburb. You know, they were a little closer to the ocean, which I'm jealous of. But otherwise, you know, yeah, it's this is a great topic, but man, there is part of that thing too where I do wish. I'll tell you this: for the first 10 years, at least, of homeownership, I felt like such a poser walking into Home Depot and Lowe's. Like I felt like the biggest fake. I felt like all those real dudes and dudettes were gonna call me out. Like this guy doesn't belong here. But now I kind of feel good about it because at least I have the volition to be there and try and give it the old college try and make the attempts. And you do learn, you know, despite my best efforts of just not being good with tools and woodworking and all that kind of stuff, you do, just by the nature of owning a home, you have to get better at things. So if you're improving a little bit, that's okay. And now I walk into Home Depot like a boss. You know,
the theme song plays the when Dagan walks in.
Yeah, totally. He's the dude on the ad.
Yeah.
I'm not worried about it anymore.
I just lean into not know. That's the big thing about me is that I'm not handy. I'm not going to become handy. I don't want to be handy. I don't really care. Because then if I become handy, then I have to do these things. I don't want to do these things. And it's a good point. Like you said earlier, Dustin, I'm good at other things too. And I really like working outside. I like working. Give me a lawnmower and a weed whacker and a hedge trimmer and a clipper and all these different things, and I'll go to fucking town, dude. I love that. I love that stuff. And I don't really consider that very incredibly masculine or handy. It's actually quite easy. I just think people kind of overcomplicate that stuff. But I like working outside, so that's more what I embrace. But yeah, like I remember, Micah, you and I went to Home Depot or Lowe's, and I literally asked the guy, I'm like, are like razors universal? Like, can I put them in any? And I think he just like stared at me. He was very nice. He's like, yes. I'm like, okay, like, I don't care. I don't know. It's like Dustin said, you can ask me about Final Fantasy VI.
That'd be awesome if he did.
Yeah. You have a question about Final Fantasy VI? I can answer that for you. Micah, I want to get you involved. I'm very grateful to have you here for many reasons, of course, but one of the things that you're the yin to my yang is I'm not handy at all, and you are very handy. Oh. I think one of the things that people don't know about you is that you went to like a machinist. You were becoming a machinist when you were in high school and into college, and so you have like this very handy tool using disposition, which I just don't even know where to begin, and I'm scared of some of that stuff. I don't want to use that stuff. It's like Dagan said. Dagan told a story, I think, on Knockback about using a chainsaw with our dad. I'm like, I'm not using a fucking chainsaw. Are you kidding me? I'm not doing that.
Horrifying.
And Dad keeps coming up. I'm sorry, Dad's listening to this. He's like, oh, why do I keep coming up? Dad asked me, he when he comes down, because he stays with us pretty often when he comes down to see the grandkids and stuff at our sister's. And he asked me often, and I appreciate it. Like, you have anything you need me to do? You want to tackle anything? But I don't need anything, and I don't want anything from him. And it's totally fine. But I'm also like, I don't want to do this. And I know that that's what you're going to force me to do. You know, I'm like, if you want to do it, you can do it. I have no problem you doing it. But so I don't even go down that road. But Micah, you've been quite like I said, the yin to my yang. So how are you feeling about, being in this house and kind of being the captain of the ship in some way, as far as if we're going to do anything practically, it's really going to go through you.
Yeah, I've definitely had to lean into it even more. I've always been a tinkerer. I spent a lot of time with my dad when I was a kid. We went fishing all the time, ice fishing in winter, and we'd always do woodworking projects together. So I was always helping him stain things. And like when we came to redo our hardwood floors, my dad did that himself. Things like that are what I grew up around. I'm nowhere near that level. Like my dad builds, birdhouses for fun and then deploys them in like the local pond so the ducks have a home. Like he's just always in the workshop. And I've had to, though, definitely become even more self-sufficient because when I had my apartment, back home, I was still close enough to my parents that it's like, oh, I need air put in my tires. I'll go to dad's house. Dad'll help me. And now it's like, there's no one here to help me. So I had to buy my own air compressor so that when I need air in my tires, I'm doing it myself. So I'm not stuck going to Wawa, having everyone watch me. So things like that, I've definitely become even more independent with. Or like recently, we got new shower heads, the kind of like the little hose, and I realized though, like I was too short to actually install them. It's like, I know how to do this, but then I'm just like limited by being like a child. So I'm getting the step stool out. I'm trying to figure all this out, can't really see very well. But it works. Whenever we buy furniture, I put it together. There are things Colin has to help me with if something's too heavy, just because I'm very short. Like our coat rack in the hallway that like I assembled, but I needed Colin's help hanging it on the wall, and it turned into quite the adventure.
Yeah, I got genuinely annoyed actually. So I rarely. I think people that know me know that I rarely get actually annoyed where like you will know that I'm mad about something. And it was one of those things where she was like, so I'm going to hold this and you screw it in. And I was like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to use the drill. I'm not going to do it right. And she was like, you just do it and do it. And I did it. And I did fuck it up. And I was like, I told you, like, I absolutely told you this wasn't going to go right. I need you to do it. So whenever we get something is, Micah, it's always assumed Micah is going to put it together or we'll just get someone on TaskRabbit to do it.
That's right. I forgot about TaskRabbit.
Go on, Mike.
Yeah, because my limitations are just being short. Like we want to hang up, the TV that we got for our gym. And it's like, it's not that I technically couldn't do this. It's that I don't want to do this on a rickety step stool. I'm too short to just handle this. Same with the coat rack of like, I put the thing together and I could put it on the wall. I ended up putting it on the wall, but I thought I was too short to do it. But yeah, I think I missed out on some stuff though when it comes to being a homeowner because I didn't get my like house hunters experience. I didn't get to like actually ever go like look at houses because Colin already had this place when I met him. It's a fantastic house. I love the neighborhood. I really like the kitchen. Like it's a great house.
Oh yeah.
But I am a little sad I never got to do that. I didn't get my house hunters moment. I didn't get to be like, this carpeting's atrocious. I didn't get to do any of that.
Yeah.
And in some ways it's a relief of like, well, I'm very indecisive, so I probably shouldn't be making any decisions like that. But it also felt a little bit like, it was just kind of a feeling like, man, I didn't get to do that. That was like one of those goals you have your whole life of it, going around shopping for houses. But I love what Dustin had mentioned about neighbors. Like, I love not having like neighbors on the other side of the wall or like above you or below you. It's not even to worry about it. Because there is anxiety about, am I being too loud? And it's 5:00 in the evening and I'm still like anxious so that maybe I should turn the TV down a bit because I'm a very considerate person. And I hated that feeling the whole time I was in, my studio apartment. It was just the worst to feel that way. So, Colin now has his drum set and he'll say like, is it too loud? And it's like, it's 2 PM and it's not an apartment. Like you can make as much noise as you want.
Do
like,
it.
Exactly. It's like, we're not drumming at, midnight. It's really fine. And we're both settling into the idea of this is our place and we don't have to worry about other people being bothered by like whatever we're doing. And it's an awesome feeling. It's so much more freedom than when you have an apartment and you feel stifled. And if you don't feel that way, you're rude. And that's just honesty.
Yeah.
That's a great point. And no cooking smells, because what is it about other people's cooking smells that just, you could be making the exact same. If you were making it fine, if it's coming from a different apartment, it's the most disgusting thing I ever smelled.
Absolutely.
When I lived in an apartment, I'm pretty sure my neighbor's kitchen was below my bedroom. So, and it was weird because it was centralized to that room. So every once in a while around dinner time, I'd walk into my bedroom and be like, oh, they're making sauerkraut tonight or something like the worst thing. I'm like, no. It's so bad. And it's like you're annoyed, but it's like they're not doing anything. They're just cooking dinner, but
right.
still annoying.
Yeah,
I'm sure they smelled our food too. So
yeah, you'd be blessed to smell the food that's being cooked in our house here. It's funny when I hear noises, I'm so programmed to living in apartments that we grew up in houses when I was a kid the entire time. I never lived in an apartment until I was in college, but you become so programmed to that I still hear noises like in the house. And we were just talking about it the other day, actually. We were in bed.
Yes.
And I was like, I don't even think about it. Like, I probably should be worried that I hear a noise upstairs or something because this is my house. But for some reason, it's the same thing of like, I don't know if a lot of people can relate to this. I think our urban audience, like people that live in urban areas, will be able to appreciate this. I've definitely heard crazy shit living in cities before. People screaming and yelling and going crazy and sounds like something bad might be happening, but it's distant or it's unspecified. And you're like, I don't know. Like, what are you supposed to do about this? And then in the few times you like would call the cops or whatever, they would just be like, I don't know. What do you want us to do? Yeah. And so you kind of like learn to ignore all of the stuff that's going on around you in your environments. And I've lived in 3 major American cities and over many years, Boston, San Francisco, and then LA. And those places have nothing on the suburbs. I mean that earnestly and honestly. I liked living specifically in San Francisco. I think San Francisco was a really great city. I think it's in complete decline. I think that's obvious. I couldn't believe reading that, like 50%, commercial lease vacancies and all of the rest. It's totally decaying. And because that's the segment that can work from home the easiest. So that's the part that's the city that's suffering the most.
Makes sense. And
that was a really wonderful place to live. It was a fun way to spend my 20s, no doubt. But I wouldn't trade any of that stuff for this, which is just, now you could put my house on the fucking Callisto, the moon of Jupiter, and I probably wouldn't know because I never really go anywhere. But I'm very happy here and I'm very happy living in a home. And I wanted to encourage people to wrap their minds around the suburbs. I'm glad you brought that up because having lived in a city for so long and knowing how people are drawn to them, especially a lot of creative people and all of that, I think people look down on the suburban lifestyle. And it's like, you can live like a king out here compared to the way you live in a city and do a lot of the same stuff and have more space and more freedom. And I don't know. I really dig it, but it has become all encompassing. And Micah, you know this because we discuss it, is when I bought this house, I was really dead set on like, I'm not going anywhere. And I'm not going anywhere for a long period, like for a while, but I suspect we'll build something and you'll have that experience of being able to customize everything to a T. Because when I found this place, I was like, yeah, this is great. It was built to spec. And I was like, yeah, this is awesome. It's not going to get any better than this. I'm good. But obviously I could have specified every little piece of it. So we'll do that in the future. And that starts with buying property, which is what I want to do next. So
yeah, it's exciting.
Yeah, that would be awesome. But in the meantime, yeah. Any closing thoughts on before we move on from home ownership, Dustin?
I got one quick thought here, just because you were mentioning about people wrapping their minds around living in the suburbs. And it's funny. A lot of the audience knows I live in a small town north of Pittsburgh called Butler. And there's so many people here that have never lived anywhere else, let alone gone anywhere else. And so commonly I'll when I'm rarely on Facebook, I'll see like the local paper post something like, oh, this person was, someone got in a fight at a bar or something, or like some like minor shit. And you see the comment, people like, this Butler has gone to shit. This is the worst place. Drugs are so bad here, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, I can walk anywhere in this town at any time of day and I am not worried once. And I've walked places in Los Angeles that in broad fucking daylight, 1 p.m., I am concerned for my safety. It's like, you guys have no idea. And that's what I always find funny is that, and I guess this just makes sense that people are, I was going to sound really mean. People are ignorant, but whether you live in the city and you've always lived in the city, or if you've lived in the suburbs and always lived there, it's like, it's not really what you think. Especially, I don't know. It's always been hard for me, people talking about living in the suburbs or specifically living in Butler and being like, oh, it sucks here. There's nothing to do here. Blah, blah, blah. The crime or whatever. And I'm like, you guys have no idea how good it is here. You have no idea. Just go to one of these cities, live there for even just a week, and you're paying 3 times as much for something, or you can't walk anywhere. Someone's accosting you either to try to sell you something or try to get money from you. It's like, or you have to step over people in order to get into a business. Like, you have no idea. So yeah, shout out to the suburbs, because more than ever now, I think it makes sense for people to consider checking it out.
Yeah,
totally.
All you need is automotive access, right? All you really need is access to a car. If you don't, like, Colin doesn't drive himself, but obviously Micah does. So as long as you could get around, that's really that's the only cost for entry, really, I feel like.
Yeah, and I would also, if I might say, Dag, like, I would also argue it's very convenient that Micah drives, but I committed to the suburbs before I even knew her, That's true. And because it is so, you can Uber if you need to go places, which occasionally I would because I need to go to appointments or all this stuff, but you can get everything delivered. I in a lot of places in the suburbs, the one disappointing part of our neighborhood is it's totally walkable, which is awesome, but there's no like neighborhood, like little neighborhood spots or anything like that. You got to kind of drive to them, which is inconvenient. So it makes you a little more isolated if you're a homebody by nature like I am. But yeah, you're totally right. Like, if you have access to a vehicle, which most people do or would, then yeah, there's nothing stopping you from spreading out and getting out of these cities that it becomes like a myopia. I was in it where it's like, oh, city life, where am I going to go? What am I going to do? Of course I'm paying $3,000 a month for my apartment. Well, why wouldn't I do that? And you just don't even think about it. And it's actually, and I've had good experiences too, especially my place in San Francisco was my place in San Francisco was awesome. And I had my landlord lived upstairs and he was just this old man. So it was great. But when I think about it, it's like I spent literally hundreds of thousands of dollars doing this and have nothing to show for it. And so that's another thing is, and I think why I always encourage it. I certainly encourage our people in LSM. I talk to them very candidly. I'm like, you really should buy a house like as soon as humanly possible and work out of that space and make it work for you and all of that. But nonetheless, I just wanted to touch base with you guys on homeownership since we're the 4 homeowners here.
Love it.
In our group. But let's move on to even better topics, I think. And I want to go to Dustin, to you for your topic of, I'll let you introduce it.
Sure. Right now, people are either going to be happy or they're going to roll their eyes, and I don't care.
Or they're going to be sad.
Yeah. But I wanted to pick this topic, just like you, Colin, for this particular lineup, because we all have really different experiences, and that is anime, the most on-brand topic for me. It had to come up. My second episode. So, okay, I didn't do my first topic, but it should be obvious. But I wanted to bring this topic up because, and I've mentioned this on Sacred Symbols a few different times, is that it's amazing to me to see how anime has risen over even, I guess, I mean, you can look back from when it first started becoming more popular in the US, but even just in the past 5 to 10 years is totally insane, where we see something go from something nobody knows about to only nerds like it to now it is completely mainstream. I mentioned on Sacred how going to some of the huge malls near my parents' house in DC, and you see anime stuff everywhere. There's anime merchandise, there's anime clothing. It's everywhere. And now to the point where we're starting to see some unfortunate failed attempts at making it even like mainstream Hollywood. We had Netflix did Cowboy Bebop, which was not very good, but still like a big production live action anime thing. And Netflix is also unfortunately doing a live action One Piece this year, which is just totally insane to think about. And I wanted to bring this to you guys just in that Micah and I grew up with anime in the same era where we were both kind of probably in its early heyday with Toonami and Dragon Ball Z, stuff like that. But I think eventually now Micah and I are into very different types of anime. But I'm really curious about with Dagan, because Colin, you've mentioned before how Dagan was getting VHS tapes of some bootleg thing that didn't even have subtitles. And it's like, what is this? What is this cartoon from Japan where people are screaming and shouting at each other? Or it was probably, I'm sure, for Dagan, unlike anything. So to not speak for him, I guess I'll just throw it to Dagan. What was that like? The early days?
Yeah, man, I was so happy that you picked this topic. It's been such a long journey for me. I mean, I feel like anime has been in my life. Like, we've been friends for 40 something years. It started for me years ago. It's such an interesting thing to talk about because, and then when I think about it in an overarching fashion, it's like anime's charm offensive on the West has really been kind of a slow burn until all of a sudden it wasn't. Because if you go back to even my parents' generation, the boomers, right? They Speed Racer and,
Dude, yeah.
Astro Boy, Osamu Tezuka, Astro Boy, and Kimba the White Lion, that stuff was already being televised in the United States in the 50s and 60s. So if you get, which is so interesting, right? And then in the 70s, there was a whole another whole era that kind of ushered into the Gen Xers. And that's when I discovered anime. Was probably, to my best recollection, it was either 79 or sometime in 80 with, and I've talked about this many times, with Gatchaman, which was Science Ninja Team Gatchaman, which we knew in the West as Battle of the Planets. And it just automatically, there was, my love affair with anime started through that show specifically because, and I think about my generation, like it was all like animation was all Scooby-Doo and Hanna-Barbera and Looney Tunes and Super Friends and Sesame Street at that point. So as soon as anime started to trickle over, it was like huge culture shock. It was like, whoa, this is different. Even for a 5-year-old or 6-year-old, whatever I was at that time, it was like, whoa, I don't know what this is, but I like it. I mean, I like how visually graphic it is. It's obviously different. The mouths aren't moving to the voices. Like, this was early dub. Like, it was really primitive, but everything about it was exciting. And I talked about this on one of our anime episodes with Kyle on Knockback a few years ago, where it was like, I remember not wanting to go to Little League baseball practice because that show was going to be on. And that's when the animation became like everything to me. And then, of course, like Voltron, things like Robotech later into the 80s, mid 80s, sort of continued to kindle that flame. And then it was late in the 80s, maybe 1990, early in high school, where a good friend of mine, like my best friend at the time, would tell me, like, he was a big comic book mark. He loved comic books. So he would go to this monthly comic book convention and he would come back to the cafeteria lunch table and be like, dude, I saw, and he would start telling me about anime, which was like the inception of OVA anime, direct to video anime, that this guy had a booth there every month and they had a little screening room with a couple of dudes and they would show anime and it was all in Japanese. This was pre-dub, pre-sub. It was all bootleg stuff being brought over from Japan, maybe dumped from Laserdisc if you were lucky, but probably duped from VHS. And he would come back and just tell me word of mouth, like, oh, I saw this thing. It was super cool. Like, it was a bunch of kids in a tank battalion fighting in the desert, or I saw this other, and he would just describe it. And the way he described it to me sounded so exciting. And I started going to these conventions with him. His grandma would drive us out, which was really far on Long Island. We lived far out east. This was near Queens. So it was a good 50 miles away probably. And we would go every month. And there was this one dude who had, boxes of, again, dubbed VHS of anime. He would have some manga. He had some anime art books. He had some anime tchotchkes, pins and toys and model kits and stuff. And that was my introduction to anime being a thing, not just some weird thing that popped up on TV once in a while if you were lucky.
Yeah.
I had already known. I already knew that this product was from Japan. Like, this was a specifically Japanese thing. We also grew up with a Japanese family on Long Island as very little kids. So I was already introduced to Godzilla and certain toys at the time that they would bring over that, their cousins still lived in Japan and stuff like that. So I would be exposed to that stuff. But that was the 89, 90, 91, where anime was just starting to creep in. And it was the same time as like video game box art. American video game box art they would do custom art for the packaging because they didn't want to use the Japanese manga inspired, anime inspired art.
Dude,
because everybody thought it was so strange. Right. What are those big eyes?
The first Suikoden is like totally weird.
It was really a strange era because I was introduced to anime certainly before it was pop culture or even subculture. It was counterculture at that time. Like even if you knew what it was, you were kind of stymied by it, or it was like, that's not really for us. Like there was an overarching sentiment in the West of like that people just wasn't embraced. And it was, the thrill of the hunt. You know what I mean? We would have to go. The only way to really get it was through this vendor at this comic book convention. And then we would start getting access to the magazines, which were the Canadian anime magazines at the time, Animerica, Animag, Protoculture Addicts, which was like a Western. It was just the beginning of the Western fan base of anime. We were just right on the cusp of it coming in. And it was so exciting at that time. It was so cool to hunt this stuff down. Nobody knew what it was. We felt like it felt cool. We felt cool, like we were part of something. We were getting in at the ground floor of like discovering this brand new thing. And it's so much fun and nobody really knows about it yet. And every new discovery, we'd go into Chinatown in New York or Chinatown in Philly because sometimes we would find the odd Dragon Ball VHS or something, Dragon Ball posters, whatever it was at the time. And that's when anime, and I was right in the perfect wheelhouse. I was in my teens and into my 20s. And then, it just kind of anime then sort of entered different eras. I think back, you said it, Dust, with Toonami and Adult Swim. Sci-Fi Channel was an early adopter. They would show things sometimes. And then that era sort of grew into the FYE, Hot Topic, I call it the mall era, where anime started to get a little bigger. The pro skateboarder Jeremy Klein started the clothing brand Hookups. That gave anime a little more exposure. And then it just started to gain that head of steam, where then it crossed over, of course, now with the subscription channels with Crunchyrolls and the Funimations and Retro Crush and all that kind of stuff. Now it's the accessibility of it is at an all-time high. It's so accessible. There's so much of it. And I got to be honest with you. And, the kids would now call this kind of sentiment, they would say this is gatekeeping. This sounds like you're gatekeeping. And honestly, I don't mean it this way at all, but I feel like being involved with anime for such an early time and seeing it grow and seeing it get bigger and everything, it's that natural sentiment of like, it just squeezes and wrings a little bit of the juice out of it for me. And the excitement of hunting it down and not, being a relatively unknown thing, and kind of the joy of introducing it to people too, because, oh, you haven't heard of this? You got to check out Akira. You got to check out Ninja Scroll. You got to check out Bubblegum Crisis, whatever it was at the time. Now that I feel like my generation has passed the baton, like I feel like it's almost not for me anymore. I feel like it's a younger man and woman's game now. And I think that's kind of a natural way to feel for somebody from my generation in a way. But also, I have to say, I think it's also wrongheaded for me to feel that way, because anime now, I think you could argue, is in this state of extreme creativity. There's some amazing ideas. There's some amazing styles, amazing young filmmakers and directors doing really inventive things with the medium. The production quality is at its highest level ever. And there's just more of it than there ever was. So it's kind of wrongheaded for me to tune out, because now is the time. It's at, I feel like it's at the epitome. In fact, when I was coming into anime was right at the time Japan was going through a huge economic crisis. Like they were going into a recession after booming in the 80s a little later than we were. I was discovering anime as the studios were closing, like as Gainax and those notorious animation studios were closing or
right.
pulling way back. Now there's so much money in it. There's so many studios. There's so many brilliant creators. And I think this will play into my topic in a little while too. But I think what it is for me, like an old curmudgeon like myself, is I'm just really possessive of my time now, being a little older. And there's so much out there to discover that it's hard for me to embark on going into something and investing the time when I don't want to be disappointed. Now, that being said, I think I always have my ear to the ground. You know, the other thing that should be said is I'm a professional animator, so I'm always rooting for anime. I want it to do well. I want it to succeed. It's such a big part of our business and our livelihood as animators, as animation professionals. And I always have my ear to the ground for new directors and new films, and certainly what Ghibli's doing. And, you know, I watched Disney's Star Wars Visions, and I always know what's going on, but I kind of keep one foot in and one foot out. And there's been times where I'll pop back in. Like Attack on Titan was too irresistible. I just heard too many good things, and I loved it. I tuned in. I enjoyed it. I loved it. There were other weird sort of anomalies along the way, and I'll kind of tune in and tune out. But I've also been really disappointed by stuff. Like, I think early on during Knockback, people were recommending dozens and dozens of recommendations for sword art online. And
You're
watched
all right
that.
skipping that one.
Oh, I got like 20 episodes in, and you know what? I really didn't like it. And then that's when I was like, you know, so now I think I'm kind of charged with the fact of like, all right, like it was just more exciting for me growing up when it wasn't, before the oversaturation set in. Like you said, Dust, before you walk into a mall, anime's just everywhere. I mean, I feel like I could go into a Hallmark store and there's going to be anime shit. You know, like it's just everywhere. I feel like I could go a mile and see something anime, where really back then it was, you know, I felt like, you know, you really had to work for it. You know, you really had to work for it. And then also it was very expensive. You know, even before, in the initial days, it was very expensive, but even in the mall days with FYE and stuff like that, like shit was, right as VHS was turning into DVD, that shit was an expensive hobby. So I love how it's more accessible now. I just feel like my generation, you know, there's a little bit of that sentiment of like, you know, waxing about the old days, where again, I think we can't help but feel that way. But also for me, at least, I do think it's a little bit wrongheaded. Like I do think I need to kind of explore that and maybe get a little more back involved into seeing what's good and to staying consistently tuned in rather than checking in and checking out and stuff like that. I think I also feel intimidated by your generation because you guys grew up with different stuff. And that's actually, I'll flip it back to you, Dustin. I know these two have to talk too about it, and I want to know Micah's generational perspective on anime a lot too. But when you compare the relatively new stuff to the older stuff, how does that bear out for you? Like, does the old stuff just look dated, or do you celebrate that stuff in general? Does it just look does the look and the traditional cell animation bearing and all that kind of stuff, does that throw you? In other words, do you just generally like the newer stuff better than the older stuff?
That's actually something that I was thinking when you were talking, is that I really wish I could remember this stat, and I don't even know how to Google it. So take everything I'm about to say with a grain of salt. But I saw once a stat that there's been more anime created between now and I think it was like 2017 or something than all of the years prior, or something like. It's some insane stat to that level.
Holy cow.
And I think this brings in a part of the bigger conversation that I actually wanted to have also, is that it's been interesting to me seeing how people react to the mainstream anime world we now live in. And it can be really, really frustrating for me, because I honestly think that most new anime is trash. Like, most of it is bad. It leans on all of the tropes and the same type of recycled ideas. It's almost like you could make a Mad Libs of anime And that's just what they do each season. They just, okay, here's a guy. It's an isekai, so he's living in another world, but they are all school kids or they're teenagers in a school, and this one has this ability, and this one can rewind time or whatever. It's like stuff like that, just recycled. Or it's like, let's take the established formula, but the girl is part horse, and that's the gimmick of it. That's a real thing that happened. Like, there's so much recycled stuff in anime that's really frustrating. And so when people are like, I hate all anime sucks, I think I kind of get it. I kind of get why you don't like this, because you've seen a lot of the stuff that relies on these same tropes over and over and over again. And so you think it feels really kind of, when I think about it, it feels really stuck up. But I'm like, I get it, because you just don't know. You haven't seen some of where this stuff comes from, that where these tropes weren't exactly tropes at the time. This was actually like kind of new and interesting. And so it's difficult for me, because now more and more new stuff, I can't get into it at all. And in fact, just the other day after we recorded Dagan, I told, like, you got to check out Chainsaw Man, because
we were talking about that.
Chainsaw Man has a lot of tropey new stuff, but it does it in a really unique and new way. And I could really throw it to Micah or Colin on this one. And maybe I'll throw it to Colin, since we're talking about a lot of the negative stuff. And Colin, your relationship to anime has always been very interesting to me, because you like the weebiest of weeby games, but that's where you draw the line. You draw the line at games. And every once in a while, I know you liked a little bit of Attack on Titan, which I think you would like more of it if you watched, but you've always been pretty strict about that. And that's always been surprising to me, in that I feel like these are the Venn diagram is huge as far as the types of stories and the types of experience you can get. As far as like a JRPG, some of that stuff can be in an anime, and sometimes better, not always. But so Colin, I need you to explain for me.
Yeah, no, totally. First of all, I wanted to talk about Attack on Titan really quickly, because I only watched the first season and a half or so, and I would absolutely like to go back to it. It's one of those things where you have to watch it because it's subbed, so I need to know what they're saying. I'm not going to listen to a dub of this cartoon, but Attack on Titan was, for what I saw, fucking dope. I mean,
so good.
Absolutely insane. And I was just a day or two ago, I was looking at the pictures of like the Titans and like the faces and all this. And I'm like, it's literally, I would say, the scariest shit I've ever seen in my life. Like, dollars to donuts. I think that might be the scariest shit I have ever seen.
It's horrific.
So Attack on Titan is dope. And I would really like to get back to it. And you're right. Like, here's my experience. And it's funny, people notice this when I post pictures or have posted pictures of my room in high school. I have like a Magic Knight Ray Earth poster on my wall, Dragon Ball posters on my wall, probably something from Ranma or something like that. And people are like, oh, you like that stuff? And I'm like, dude, I was watching Dragon Ball before you motherfuckers were even born. It's just, we don't talk about those days, because my segue, I've been very blessed. And Dagan and I were just talking about this, about generations and how I'm technically a millennial, being born in 1984, but that doesn't really feel right. And I feel like I'm kind of in Generation X or something in between, because my siblings were so much older than me that I had experiences or was exposed to things I shouldn't have been exposed to, both for my age and my generation. I just would have totally missed all this shit. And so Dagan coming home when I'm 6 years old with a stack of VHSs from Chinatown or from the Holiday Inn in Garden City, where he would go to these random comic conventions, and the first time he would see them, I would see them. I was exposed to all this shit, like right off the bat. And I think what it did was set off an acceptance of an aesthetic that I liked, that I saw mimicked in, you could see it in, when I was a kid, I drew the connection between Dragon Warrior and Dragon Ball. Long before I understood Akira Toriyama was the connection, I was like, these look exactly the same. They literally look like they belong in the same world. Well, it's the same person making them. It's literally not even the same style. And so I think, and to this day, I love Dragon Quest. So I think that was embedded in my mind, being exposed to it so early and having that really like Etch-a-Sketch like mind, where it's like, okay, now here's Ranma half. here's Bubblegum Crisis. Okay, we're gonna shake this up. Here's Vampire Hunter. Here's this here, and it's like okay. And I was watching all that stuff and became a fan of it, and it was almost part of my childhood to the point where I grew up, even me being very childlike, like Dagan, you let go of some of your childlike things. And one of those things was cartoons for me. Like one of those things was I'm letting go of this stuff, but I'm going to keep the connection with the games I played. And you're right. I was playing Weeby games, very Weeby games on SNES. We just didn't know them at the time. Like something like Lufia is a pretty Weeby game. And then when you move on to, and everything coming from Enix was Weeby, Secret of Mana was Weeby. So, and you move on to PS1 and it's full on, Tales of Destiny, Wild Arms. So I had a appreciation and a tolerance for it that I actually think helped me appreciate video games more. And I wrote specifically in my notes that what broke me with anime, because I wasn't hostile towards anime until I got older. I used to like when people would be in anime, and I just think that was cool. And even if it was, just very baseline or mainstream shit, I was like, that's neat. But what broke me was the PlayStation 3 era specifically, because it was the marriage of this anime aesthetic and just really bad Japanese role-playing game after really bad Japanese role-playing game after really bad Japanese role-playing game. And I'm like, I kind of was just like, all of this sucks. All of this sucks. And really, I should have compartmentalized it better and realized, well, I love Persona. I love Trails of Cold Steel. I don't consider Final Fantasy really weebish or Japanese, but it is both of those things really when you think about it. Tales is a thing I've loved since I was in 9th grade when I was first introduced to it, and that's very weeby as well. So you're right. It's like Dagan said, I have 2 feet in different worlds as well. They're different worlds than Dagan had described. One is that of being like kind of experienced with watching and being exposed to anime from a very young, impressionable age. And the other is just being like, well, I don't like even Western cartoons, so why would I like Japanese cartoons? It's just not what I absorb. It's nothing against them. It's obviously nothing against what Dagan does for a living. It's just, and Dagan makes children's content anyway, so it's not for me anyway. But although maybe you would argue that it is, I don't know. But I just I'm like that. It just made sense to me at the time to just let it all go. And I think that that's how I became kind of dissuaded out of anime, probably, sometime in high school. But Micah, we haven't heard from you, and I really want to hear from you now because you're a big weeb. And this is something that I learned more and more as we started dating, and obviously when you moved in and everything. I mean, you're into it, you're passionate about it, you have a lot of fandom, a lot of connections to a lot of these things. So talk to me about your experience with anime.
Yeah, I mean, if you're watching the video and you see the shelf behind me, it's just all
Do you see my shelf? Well, you can't see it, but I have my own shelf now of my own statues as well. So I was inspired.
Yeah, well, it just came up the other day in a family gathering. Uncle Mike is saying that he went to some store and he's like, and they have all these anime figurines, but like he didn't know any of them, of course, and he's like, I don't know anybody that watches that stuff. And I was like, I collect anime figurines. He's like, really? And he's like, do you know who they were? And it's like, I wasn't there, so no, I can't. Like, I don't
Probably
know who these
Goku
people were.
Was one of them.
But yeah,
safe bet.
For me, it all started when I was a kid with the Beyblade TV show, which Beyblades are, of course,
nice.
One of the best children's toys ever. They're extremely dangerous, and they're wonderful. But so I loved that TV show when I was a kid. I wasn't really supposed to watch it because it was too violent. I had a very strict upbringing. So a lot of this, like Pokemon was literally banned from the house.
Oh.
That was a whole church thing. Nobody was allowed to watch Pokemon. That was a whole thing. But I loved the Beyblade show and the toys that went with it. But it was also the first time that people really articulated that this stuff, like girls aren't supposed to like that stuff, which has kind of just been a theme throughout my life with all my interests and hobbies. But it started with Beyblades. And like in 4th grade, we had a set on the playground and people were literally saying like, we don't want you to play with us. And I remember just being like really bummed. Like, I just want to play Beyblades, man.
Oh, that's
and
lame.
So, and that's been throughout my whole life with video games and wrestling and pretty much everything I like. But that's where it started. I got into other anime much later in life. It was really around like 2011 when I started getting heavy into video games again, is when like my boyfriend at the time was like, I'm going to rewatch Dragon Ball Z because he loved it when he was a kid, hadn't seen it since. And I'd never seen it at all, but I wasn't really interested. So I was like, whatever, like I'm going to go, play a game in the other room, and I overhear the TV. Just this insane yelling. It's constant. They're just constantly yelling. And I was like, what's going on
That's
the show?
something my grandparents would comment on. Why are they always yelling in that show? They're always grunting.
And like, what's all this happening? They're just constantly screaming. And so I had to watch it. And that's what got me started watching the show, was just curiosity of like, what the fuck are they yelling about? And I loved it. I immediately loved it. Vegeta is my favorite character.
Oh, he's so cool.
And that's most of what I collect. And I just absolutely fell in love with this product. And so, of course, I love any action shows. Dragon Ball Z and like Naruto are my favorite shows. I love the action sequences, the fights that last a whole season. It's just incredible to me. And then I started getting into comedies because I got a Funimation subscription. And that's when I started branching out more and watching some of the sports anime, which weren't really my thing, aside from Keijo, because it's just really funny. But getting into comedies was what really took off for me, of watching a ton more shows and just really getting into that type of stuff and branching out from just the action shows. Because I tried to get into One Piece, which was fantastic, but there's just too much of it. There's a hopeless feeling knowing that you'll never see all of it unless you become like a hermit and never see the sun again.
It's huge.
But as I started getting more into comedies and everything, that's when I just really started to appreciate the medium more and talking to my friends more about it, because at first it was almost like an embarrassing thing, because in the past I'd been just flat out told like, this isn't for you. I'm very much from the generation where your grandma would try to get you to buy a doll instead of the Hot Wheels you wanted. It's like,
right.
It's like you take me to the toy store and you're like, pick out a toy, and I come back with Hot Wheels and you're like, that's not a girl toy. And it's like, what do you care? Like, this is what I want. And that's how I grew up.
Yeah.
So as I've gotten older and, have just started to give, less of a shit what people think, it's been really freeing to just be able to watch what you want, play the games you want to play. Because certainly with gaming, it's 90% of what I play is JRPGs. I'm almost always playing something in that realm. And that's certainly influenced by anime, because once I started getting more into gaming, watching Dragon Ball Z and all that, I started playing all the Dragon Ball Z games, and then just fell down a whole rabbit hole of there's so many great games here, between like Colin's with Tales and everything. I love those. So it certainly has influenced like not just my TV watching habits. I don't watch a lot of TV these days, but certainly gaming is like heavily influenced by the anime that I liked. And just that art style, I love it. I love all my little figures on the shelf. It's just a big part of like my life, even though I don't like actively watch it every day. It's still like walking into my office and seeing these little dudes over there. It's awesome.
Yeah. It's funny because I mentioned earlier how I have empathy and frustration for people who are like no anime ever type people, because I get it. You see the weird kinky stuff, or like I mentioned the show about the girl that's also part horse. Like I get it. There's this weird stuff that can be like a no-go for people. But I was talking to Holly about this exact thing. I'm like, I feel wrong to say like anime it goes beyond genre. It's almost like its own medium in a way, but not really. Because I think about some of these experiences like Dagan, you mentioned Akira. Like, just think about, I can't even imagine what it was like. So that was like what, 1988 in Japan, a few years later. So people in the US thought of cartoons as The Little Mermaid, like feature animated films, The Little Mermaid. And then they see a film like Akira. And it's just insane to think about, like, how, if you haven't seen Akira, man, the movie's fucking unreal. It's so good. But I think about even just some newer stuff like Full Metal Alchemist or Death Note, or you guys have talked about Attack on Titan, that it's like this medium can be used to tell these amazing stories that if you talk to people that have watched them, it sticks with them forever. Just like a great novel or a great film or a great, game, whatever. It has that ability to make these lasting imprints on us. And yeah, it's like not everyone's going to be into JoJo's Bizarre Adventure or some other wacky shit. That's going to be only probably for the more hardcore. But like doesn't like when I think about Death Note, Dagan, I don't know if you've watched that at all, but I'm like, man, Breaking Bad fans need to watch Death Note because it has that tension. The like, when is he gonna get caught? Because clearly this person's so smart, and you see like the way the dynamics between the characters work, and like every word matters. Like, man, so many people could get into this and think it's amazing if they could just get past that barrier. And like I said, I get it. I totally get it. But I don't know. I mean, maybe there's a good point to wrap up. Is just say like, man, I encourage people to look past the weird kinky shit you've seen if you've thought
those
never.
big breasts, those big anime breasts.
I caution that though, because those are some of my favorite shows.
Sure.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Me too. I mean, there's tropes, just like in every area, every facet of fiction, filmmaking, whatever, right? There's sexy girls, giant robots, the half-breed animal, human hybrid things. I don't want to say furries. I know it's not a very nice thing to say. But, there's always those things. But that doesn't define the entire body of work of anime over the last however many decades. Fullmetal Alchemist and Death Note are two that have gotten recommended a lot. But, what you say resonates, Dustin, because just like with any TV series, any film, any great book, anime is no different than anything else. It's no different than live action film dating back 100 years. It's great story, immersive worlds, really solid characters that the audience could care about. It's built on the same foundations as everything else. So you just I've known animators that there's just something about anime. There's just something too specific for some people. I've known animators, good friends of mine that are curmudgeons for decades now, that I'll think of something and show them and be like, yeah, I can't watch that. From the lowest budget TV series all the way through things like Akira. And there's just too much, I don't know what it is, too much Japanese flavor in it for them or something. It's really odd. They grew up on Disney feature films and that's what they want to see. So I recommend getting into anime. I don't know how you guys feel about this. I recommend entering in to anime via genre. Do you like sci-fi? Do you like fantasy, cyber western, cyberpunk, historical drama, slice of life, modern day family stories, comedy, like Micah said? Like, what do you go in for? Because for me, it's been easy. Like, I'm such a visual guy. Like, I go in for design. I go in for how fluid the animation is. I'm an easy mark for anime. Like, because you already have me at the visuals. I grew up in an era where we didn't have dubs or subs. Everything was in Japanese. Think of how confused my grandparents were when I was watching a 2-hour video in Japanese. I had no idea what the hell was even going on.
That's hardcore, dude. I love that.
Like, what the fuck is he doing? And the thing is, too, I have to say, too, to make fun of my generation of anime like purists, is that I wonder how much of the magic came through not understanding a blessed thing we were watching, because it always made the stories seem bigger and better than they probably oftentimes were. So if I wasn't hinging on the visuals, how good the animation was and how beautiful the design is, I could have been, I'm sure many times I was watching, and sometimes it bared out and sometimes it didn't. I was watching the worst, hackneyed, rote, worst stories ever that were just the most basic things, but they seemed magical because I really didn't understand what the hell was happening. And you guys didn't benefit from that. You guys came into an era, like Micah was saying, where like the Eastern Western co-pros with Pokemon and Digimon and Beyblade and stuff, like anime was already like a linchpin and a keystone in a lot of Western companies, like in their portfolio. Like Fox Kids would have never existed without taking anime over and presenting it to Western audiences. Probably 75% of their slate was made in Asia. And the rest of the 25% were things that were, created in the Western world. So you guys really came into a much different era of anime. It's going to be interesting to see how I love the saturation, because for me, it just means this is going to be more, and there's going to be more work for animators and visionaries in all countries. I mean, look what happened with Castlevania. That was an anime, maybe the first anime I acknowledge of not even being created in Japan. which is pretty fascinating. Like anime, and I think your generation of artists and animators, like the people that are in their late 20s, early 30s now, they draw anime as well as Japanese people do. It took a while to get there, but it's there. And not only that, but they know how to animate like a Japanese veteran, studio veteran. So it's going to be interesting to see how it changes and, the offerings that we get. I can't see it reaching a valley. I think it's only going to ascend from here.
Yeah. Kids have it easy now. Anime is socially acceptable. I remember reading a manga in 6th grade. I think I was in 5th grade. A 6th grader came up to me. He's like, "Why are you always reading that Chinese shit?" And I was like, "I like it. And it's also not Chinese." It's like
those backwards
whatever.
books.
Yeah. So, but yeah, it is funny just to think about, like, yeah, you're how it's getting bigger and bigger, and the social acceptability aspect is also really interesting to me too, just because I remember there was like 3 or 4, maybe not even that, like 3 kids in my class that were like, "Yeah, we watched the show Dragon Ball Z." And it was like kind of new and exciting, which is so funny because that show was old by the time I was in.
That's what I was saying. Even when Dragon Ball Z was on Cartoon Network the first time, I was like, I had seen some of this already. Which was funny, and that was in the mid 90s when it started on Cartoon Network.
I had a cousin. It was technically my mom's cousin who kind of sounds like was in a lot of the same circles or like going to conventions like this, like you guys were. And I remember him telling us, he's like, "Yeah, after Dragon Ball Z, there's this thing called Dragon Ball GT, and it involves Trunks' daughter." And we were like, "Oh my God, how does he know? How does he know? It's not on TV. How can he know this knowledge?" He would like show us like a clip or from something. We're like, or like he had like a VHS tape. We're like, this is incredible. How does he know about this? Just so funny thinking about it now. Like, yeah, but it's a better time now. Hopefully we can get some of this quality control stuff situated without, I won't open a whole new can of worms, but it is exciting overall. So anime, check it out. Colin, I want to make a challenge to you. Attack on Titan is going to be over at the end of this year.
Yeah.
Completely
over.
over.
I thought it already was over. Oh, that's interesting. Okay.
The manga's over. Manga's over.
So, okay, here's the thing about Attack on Titan. They started to do the final season 2 years ago. And then at the last episode, they're like, "Gotcha, we're doing part 2. Then next year, they did part 2 of the final season. At the end of that, they're like, "Gotcha, we're doing another part. The final, this is the final part of the final season." Last week, Mappa, the anime company that's doing it, they're like, "We're not quite done with everything yet. So we're dividing part 3 into 2 parts. The first part will be out in March, and the second part will be out sometime later this year."
I didn't even know this.
Yeah, it's insanity. But yeah, it'll be over at the end of the year. So just
it's an dude.
Think about it.
That particular, I just have a lot of memories of when I was living in LA, just sitting on the couch in my living room, watching it and pausing it during those interstitials because there was so much text and information in the interstitials, and then they would go by really fast, and I'd be like, "Oh my God!" So pausing is like all these different schematics and all. I was like, "This is awesome," and I just found the enemy to be profoundly frightening.
Oh, it gets better, dude.
It gets so much better / worse. As far as how
seasons 2, 3, and 4 is. Get it.
I love it. I just love the idea. I'll get to it. I think about it a lot, and because I feel like I'm going to become a super fan of it. It'll be one of those things where I'm going to be wearing that logo that some people wear on their on their shirts, whatever it is.
Survey Corps. You're in for a treat. It's special. Attack on Titan is special. It really is. It's something that's Isayama is a genius. That guy is just, put him up there with the top anime creator visionaries, I would say. Yeah.
My friends, Dagan, let's finish strong with your topic.
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of a nice transition into what I wanted to talk about, and really excited to hear what you guys have to say about this too. But guilty pleasure movies and the idea of guilty pleasure movies. This is something I think about often, and it's something that I realized in just thinking about the topic a little further. It's something that's changed a few times over my earliest memories of just watching movies or being old enough to realize like, okay, I'm watching a movie over and over again. So I think my earliest sort of recollection of this, I was in my early to probably mid-teens. And there were two movies specifically where this idea started for me. And that was this movie called Thrashin', which was mid-'80s, Josh Brolin, really low budget affair. Might have been one of Josh Brolin's first movies, actually, centered around a teenage skateboarder and his friends in California. And just notoriously cheesy film that came out in 86, I think. I first saw it in 87, the same year I started skateboarding. And I remember it resonating with me and was the first movie where I was kind of right down the middle because it kind of understood and got what skateboarding was in that era. And the other 50% just was completely clueless. So I was enjoying it on one hand because it was about modern day skateboarding and kind of understood it. And the other half because it was completely wide of the mark. Like it was like, this is the cheesiest thing ever. Yeah. And the other guilty pleasure movie I should mention is Rad, right? The BMX biking movie, sort of the BMX version of Thrashin', basically. We'll go to the video store for that. And I remember thinking the notion as a 15-year-old, right, or 14-year-old then of like, I watch these movies way too much. These are really cheesy movies, but just, I don't know, they comforted me. I enjoyed them, right? But I don't want anybody to know that I watched these this much. Like there was a certain amount of embarrassment that would come along with had people known I watched these movies so much. And then I think the idea of a guilty pleasure movie just kind of changed, like regardless, got a little older. Sometimes it was a comedy, could have been a Rodney Dangerfield movie like Back to School, something that just made me laugh. Something maybe a little later, like the action movies, those Denzel Washington movies or Liam Neeson Taken or Denzel Washington in The Equalizer or Man on Fire. Like they're pretty bad movies, but they're just fun. They're entertaining. They're action. It could be a super. I went through a big super bad phase. We even did a knockback episode on super bad. This movie just made me laugh. I always talk about what else? What other comedies do I really love? Wedding Crashers, stuff like that. But I realized with those things, all those things, regardless of the genre or whatever, they were just intellectually low lift movies, like something you could just pop on, sort of half pay attention to, be entertained, but you didn't really have to be that invested in it. It just was like, all right, like I could just go, I could laugh, I could revel in the action. I could maybe I enjoy the dialogue. Maybe I enjoy it because it's kind of cheesy, but it's kind of the same thing. Like I don't have to, it's not some sort of philosophical doctrine that I got to be plugged into. It's not this thing that I have to really get invested in. I could just kind of relax and enjoy it. Right. And then I think about this a lot now because with the anime conversation, it's the same thing. It's like I'm getting older. My time is precious. That whole notion of like, who's going to give me that 2 hours back? Who's going to give me that 3 hours back? So I'm very guarded about my time and what I spend time sort of whatever fiction I take time in, getting involved with. And it's funny now because I realize that's kind of to my detriment a little bit because I realize like, because I'm so fearful about starting something new that I'm not going to like, be it a TV series, a film, whatever, I'll just kind of rely on the old standbys and watch things that I know I'm going to enjoy. It's kind of ridiculous. So I'll watch something 20, 30 times instead of starting something new. These could be really cheesy things like Thrashin'. They could be some of the most, notoriously wonderful movies ever made. Goodfellas, Akira, could be something in between. But I have this thing now where I'll just watch the same things over and over again. I'm doing this lately with the Rocky movies, the first 3 Rocky movies. I just love them. I know I'm always going to enjoy it. So I'll just pop it in. And then but here's the thing. That's where the guilty comes in for me because I'm fancy myself as like a bit of a cinephile. I like film. I like all types of film, be it a blockbuster, an indie film. I try to follow young directors. Like I really like movies. And I realized like There's so many young directors. There's a bunch of Kurosawa movies I haven't seen. There's Fellini movies I haven't seen. There's all these French New Wave, like all these like cinephile-esque movie experiences I haven't had, but I'll just go in and I'll watch Rocky 2 again. So that's where my shame comes in now, because I could be devouring a David Lynch movie I haven't seen, but instead I'm just kind of watching Superbad again. And so that evolution of what a guilty pleasure movie was to me sort of changed over time. And now I realize, I don't know. Let me get you guys' opinion on that. Should I just kind of relax and enjoy myself? You know what? Another one is 300. I love that movie. I don't apologize for it. Zack Snyder, give me 300. Gerard Butler. Like, I just love that movie. But I'll watch that movie over and over again, or Gladiator, or The Patriot, like Colin and I talk about, instead of...
That's a separate issue.
That's a separate issue. And I consider them linked.
Yes.
But, you know, like that instead of starting something new and taking a chance on something. So, and I'm encumbered by that now. Like, it's become kind of a hang up, and I don't know how to dodge it. So what do you guys think of that? Should I just kind of not be an apologist for that and just say, hey, relax on your couch, enjoy something you know you're going to enjoy every time out? Or should I be more of a risk taker? I don't know.
It's a separate issue. No, I first of all, I relate to you in the sense, this is how it is when I go out to eat, is I'd rather just go to the old standbys that I know are good. I very rarely go outside of that comfort zone because it's too risky.
Yeah.
Because as you said, it's a time proposition where it's like, well, I don't know if I'm going to like this or not. But I feel that way about music a lot too, unfortunately. But when I open myself up to new music, I find and discover lots of new good stuff. You just have to kind of be willing to ride through and maybe listen to some stuff that's not ideal and waste some of that time that you could be listening to something you've already listened to time and time again. But I've basically, in the interest of time, personally, have cut movies pretty much completely out of my repertoire. Like, I just don't even watch films. I don't even... Micah, what's the last movie we even watched? Oh, we watched Star Wars: A New Hope for Knockback. That's basically the only time I'll ever watch a movie is for Knockback. But what are you feeling about this, Micah?
Well, so I agree with Dagan. We definitely do the same thing. We would much rather put on Antiques Roadshow on YouTube than go through the 1899 debacle again. Like, it felt like such a waste of my time to try this new thing and end up hating it. So it's like, I might as well just put on something that I know is going to be good. It could be Always Sunny. It could be Antiques Roadshow. It could be, you know, the
Trailer Park Boys
body cams. Yeah. Oh, I love Trailer Park Boys.
So
we do
good.
need to finish that because you haven't even gotten to the season I love yet.
Yeah.
I just still in the early stuff.
Yeah. I'm very slowly, like over years, watching Trailer Park Boys. That show actually just makes me
it's so good, dude.
Is that it, Micah? Were you finished at that point?
Well, for that, are you asking me like my actual movies at this point? Or?
Yeah, I would love to know that.
All right. Well, for they're genuinely embarrassing only because I find these movies to be actually good. I was talking with Colin about this because I didn't know that people didn't like these movies until very recently. The first one, which is my all-time favorite movie, is Transformers 2007.
Oh, wow.
Whoa, I feel like I just got slapped in the face. Not in a bad way. That's how aggressive that felt to me. Wow.
So I love robots. I've always loved robots. My dad and I would watch iRobot every time it was on TV. We adored that movie. And in high school, I took robotics classes, which if I had gone like a different path in my life would have been something I would have loved.
You've been Dr. Wily.
I loved building and coding those robots. It was like one of my best things.
So cool.
So 2007 Transformers comes out. I was so excited. I remember I was telling all my classmates about it. They didn't give a shit, but I was telling everyone like the movie's almost out. It's coming. Like I was really excited about it. I actually made a treasure chest that was Transformers themed at school. And it has, you know, the Autobot symbol, the Decepticon symbol. On the side, it says to punish and enslave because that's what the cop car said in Transformers. I was really into it. And all three of the movies, actually, I've seen them all several times. But that first one is my all-time favorite movie. It has not been dethroned by anything else I've seen.
Wow.
There's a guy at the Publix deli that looks like Shia LaBeouf, and every time I see him there, I just like it's fun for me because it's like I get to meet
It's a
him.
fun
but I
little
didn't-
Easter egg in your life.
I love that dude.
Life Easter egg.
But so I didn't know until a couple of years ago about is really actually finding out from Colin how much Dagan disliked this movie, and I was like, people think those are bad. Because
Yeah.
I knew like the Mark Wahlberg one. I knew that was bad. I didn't watch it. I said, I can't watch 2 hours of him saying Transformers. I can't do it, right? You got to throw the R in there.
Transformers.
So,
Where are those
I didn't bother.
Transformers?
Look, I have to
didn't
tell
bother
you,
with
I've never even seen these movies, so I can't really honestly say if they're good or bad.
Oh, they're
Because
so
I was
good.
such a Transformer purist, and as soon as I found out like certain cars were like they were all GM cars and stuff, I was like, no, that's supposed to be a Porsche. So like I like was like, why could you just do a transforming robot movie that's not Transformers? That was and I never got, again, being that old curmudgeon shouting at the sky type thing, like you have to forgive me, like there's some things I just can't get past. And so I can't, these could be wonderful movies. I don't, so I'm not discrediting your pick. I think it's very brave, actually.
Yeah, it's something. I mean, it's I saw that movie in the theater in July of 2007, the day I moved, or it was like the first night I was in San Francisco when I moved there. And so that's why I remember seeing it so well. And I don't think it's a bad movie. I just I think the special effects are so muddled that you don't really know what's going on, and that's
busy. Yeah,
it's like very, very busy in my opinion. And yeah, I don't know. I have no real affinity for the Transformers one way or the other, so I wasn't as offended as Dagan and a lot of other people were. They played very fast and loose with what the different cars are supposed to be and all of that, which it just goes to show you, like maybe do some new things. That would be nice, but then you wouldn't make as much money, perhaps. So
right, but Micah didn't grow up with that, so she didn't know
exactly.
No.
It was springing out of that world of the animation and the comic books and all that kind of stuff. But it's so funny because Transformers just fully went back to the source material. Like Transformers, the animated movie from the mid '80s, is like the source material for Transformers. It went back.
That
to
movie rules.
Oh, it's so good.
You got the touch, dude. It's awesome.
That movie was a scarring event for a lot of different people. It had material effects on G.I. Joe, that movie that would come out later, where they were going to straight up kill Duke, and then they were like, we cannot kill both Optimus Prime and Duke. People are going to have a fucking meltdown, which is why it's the famous line, like we always say, like at the end of G.I. Joe, the movie, it's like, it was supposed to clearly be like, Duke's dead. And it's like, Duke's in a coma. After getting straight up stabbed in the heart by Serpentor.
Hasbro was crazy.
I loved it. Yeah. For people that don't know, you can go read about that. People like melted down when Optimus Prime
Dude,
and
12
other
year olds
Autobots died in
worldwide.
What'd you say?
I said 12-year-olds worldwide were crushed.
Yeah,
that day.
I think wasn't Mom telling us that like she has memories of this? Someone was telling us like that there's like they have a memory of how controversial that was. For
kids. It was so bad, dude.
Yeah,
we had a neighbor. I remember specifically hearing about it before I saw it. We had a neighbor with a younger son. He was like, I don't know, somewhere between me and Colin's age. Let's say he was Allie's age. And she took him to go see it. I was already 12. Like I was already like too old to admit that I still love Transformers, but I was paying attention. And we were on the front stoop and she came over and she was telling us about the movie and she was like, Optimus Prime died. And I remember just going white. Like I was just like, what did she just say? But I couldn't look like I gave a shit. So I probably was like turning away, but I was devastated. I was like, they did what? And then seeing it, the rock music, all the Autobots dying in like the first, 5 minutes battle and Orson Welles' voice. Like it was such a weird experience. It was really strange.
Yeah,
but
you want to see all your heroes die right off the bat?
It was so
like an apocalypse
violently,
now.
like their faces exploding off and stuff like that. I was like, oh my God. Like it felt, that's when I realized adult animation was a thing, I think, where it was like, you could make this kid thing and turn it into a adult thing just by taking it off TV and putting it on the big screen. That's interesting, But so, all right. So that's an interesting one, Micah. What else? Do you have any other guilty pleasure movies?
So my other favorite movie, and this one I didn't know people thought this was bad until very recently, and it's X-Men Origins Wolverine. And that's like one of my all-time favorite movies. I remember I saw it at the drive-in theater and I was going nuts in the car. Like I was so amped about it.
I like that movie.
And then that's the one where at the end they tease that there's going to be a Deadpool movie, and then it took them like 10 years to actually do it. But my friends and I, we were like incredibly excited about that. We're like, did you see the end of it? There's going to be a Deadpool movie. And I've watched that movie so many times. It's one of my favorites to rewatch. I didn't know it was considered a bad X-Men movie because it's the only one I've ever seen. So I just loved it for what it was and thought it was fantastic. And I could watch it again today. It's one of my favorite movies. And now I feel shame because I know people really don't like it and say how horrible it is. I guess Will.i.am being in it was a little weird, but like
I don't remember that.
I loved it. I loved it for what it was. Action movies are my favorites, and comedies. Colin is like really into dramas, and he's the only reason I watch any of these things. Like, without sounding like a hipster, I genuinely would have never seen Game of Thrones if you didn't watch it for Knockback, because like it's really good, but I just don't watch things that aren't funny. My favorite places to be are like action movies or comedies. And I just don't really care for dramas that much.
Oh, that's interesting.
So for me, it's like this is the pinnacle of what an action movie should be. But I know now at this point that it's not very good. And most people have a very poor reaction when I say that's like my second favorite movie of all time.
That is an interesting. Is that the only X-Men movie you still ever seen?
Yeah, I tried to watch a different one. And I couldn't get through the first 15 minutes, and it's really stupid, but there was like a painting of Abraham Lincoln or something on the wall, and every time they panned to it, it made me laugh. And then I couldn't get through.
It's a comedy.
I couldn't get through the rest of it. Like, I don't even know which one it is. There's that blue monkey man is like running around the White House, I guess.
Nightcrawler or Beast.
Okay.
I guess that could fit either description.
And like, they pan over to this like portrait of Abe Lincoln, and every time I just cackle, and I couldn't get past that.
I remember which one that
laughter. So it just at that point wasn't an action movie anymore, and it was too weird. But yeah, that's the only X-Men movie I've seen aside from like I love the Deadpool movies. Those are fantastic. And
super well
they
done.
Don't really count.
Yeah, those are good. Those are a nice combination of action and humor too. Very, very unique flavor of humor too. Those are great choices because those are really offbeat choices. Those would have been hard to predict, those two movies. I like it.
Indeed. Dustin, what do you have to say?
Yeah. This one had me thinking because we've gotten a similar question on Sacred Symbols about this. Like, what are your guilty pleasure games? And I had a hard time answering that question too, because I don't really feel guilty about the things that I enjoy. I don't know. Like, and I guess there's some things you can acknowledge and be like, I know this is bad, but I still like it. But I don't know. Like, I was thinking because I guess there's things that I like that maybe people would think that like, oh, a guy that's 30 shouldn't like that, or it's not traditionally liked by people you're either for your age or the fact you're a guy, you know? Like, for example, I really, really enjoy some romantic anime films. Like,
okay.
and some of these aren't necessarily even like you would think of like a romance novel, only anime. It's not like that. It's like from a few years ago, Your Name, the Makoto Shinkai movie. I really like that. And some of his other movies too, which lean into like even more like romance stuff, like 5 centimeters per second. I really, really like that movie. And I don't know, I guess it's somewhat a little bit embarrassing. Like, I'm not going around to people and be like, I like anime romance movies, you know? So I guess it does there is some level of guilt involved, but I don't know. I don't feel bad saying that I really like those. There are movies that you were talking about, movies that you always end up going back to. And there's like that weighing out of time versus what you enjoy versus experience something new. And that's something that the last few years I almost don't want to go back and watch any movie I've ever seen before, because I feel this need to min-max the time I spend watching stuff. Where it's like,
so you flip it.
And I'm wondering, I think that I will eventually flip back as I get older to be like, I don't want to see anything new. I just want to watch the stuff that I like. But I think like, man, there's so many movies out there that I know that people think are classic films or classic shows, whatever, like 10 out of 10 must see that I haven't seen yet. And so often if I watch a movie I've already seen, I'm like, am I wasting my time doing this right now?
Yep.
So, and it's funny because sometimes we end up watching movies again. For example, Holly and I are watching through all of the Tarantino movies again, which has been awesome. And the thing that I think I forget sometimes is just that most of the time I don't remember the things in these movies that I watch again. I watched Pulp Fiction again. I was like, holy shit. I totally forgot about, I'll just say, the scene in the back room of the shop.
Oh my God.
I like it was like good. Watching it for the first time again. I was like, oh no. So you can still have those moments where you can almost experience something anew, which is something I undervalue. One movie in particular, though, which again, it kind of fits, but I don't feel guilty about this, is that my family has had a tradition my entire life because this film came out in 1993. My dad, I'm going to have to refresh on the story, but basically him and his friend went to the drive-in every week this summer in 93 to watch this movie. And it was dubbed The Summer of Love because his friend watched this movie and he was dating this girl at this time. So every summer we gather with friends and family to watch this film. It's So I Married an Axe Murderer. Which is a Mike Myers film, 93, and it's often not talked about. In fact, a lot of people don't know about this movie that he did. Yeah, exactly.
Our sister Dana is obsessed with this movie.
Yeah, you don't know that my sister Dana used to call me Head because I have a huge head.
I don't know that. Yeah. No, dude, I have watched this movie every year of my life, my entire life, straight up. Every year we watch this movie. Usually it's like late May and we get together and we've started to get kind of, we've started to get a little cheeky with it. Cause we've started like Holly has found a juice tiger at Goodwill. So we'll like put that on the counter and there's like a scene where his mom talks about a juice tiger and we like have the Weekly World News printed out. And we set it in the bathroom. So if anyone goes to the bathroom, because there's a scene where he finds the Weekly World News. It's almost like Rocky Horror, but just for our house and our friends. And this movie is really, really special. And I almost like, I want to tell people about it, but it feels like a Furman family secret is this movie. And we've brought people into this circle. And so I guess I'm talking about it here. So at this point, I'm just recommending to everybody that this movie is
definitely, dude,
so forgotten. And here's the thing. If you guys ever do a knockback topic, I've never demanded to be on knockback, but I gotta be involved on that one.
That would be a fun one.
Yeah, I'm surprised we've never done that because we do like that movie. Head down now.
Yeah.
It is often overlooked though.
Yeah, it was Mike Myers doing characters in a pre-Austin Powers environment. I mean, it was basically the springboard for Austin Powers. So
yeah, it was like a tryout. Yeah,
right, exactly.
Yeah, kind of was.
And we love Austin Powers. I mean, Austin Powers is absolutely, dude. I was Alan Parsons Projects. Don't wait for me, whatever the hell it's called. Came on, and I was just laughing because it's like, we'll call it the Alan Parsons Project. So fucking stupid. It's like the stupidest joke in the entire movie.
But Dustin, you're not embarrassed of So I Married an Axe Murderer.
No, that's the thing. It's not guilty. But it is that movie.
Pleasure.
It's just pleasure. And it's the movie like I said, we always return to it every year. It's like a deeply rooted Furman family tradition.
I like that.
So I guess it only kind of applies. But like I said, people need to check this movie out. And it's funny because so Colin, you mentioned about how he plays multiple roles. Mike Myers plays his dad in the movie. And so this is really funny because, like, especially now, if you watch it on Blu-ray, you can so obviously see how they green screened certain parts. But his dad has this accent and he sounds like Shrek because it's the same type of accent. And when I was a kid and I saw Shrek in like 2002, I was like, wow, he's talking like his dad in the movie. So I married an axe murderer.
Yeah, same character, easy money.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So, but yeah, I don't know. Like to just go back to what I said initially, I can't think of anything that I necessarily feel guilty about watching. Maybe, like I said, maybe a little hesitant to explain. So I guess that applies to guilty. But if you like something, just like it. Go for it.
I agree. What do we always say in Sacred Symbols? Do what feels good.
Do what feels good, baby. Let's go. Yeah.
I like the moxie. I mean, I like the idea. I like everything you said, Dustin, because it kind of flipped my argument a little bit. And I do like the idea of being rewarded for your courage, right? Like, Dagan, don't watch Lethal Weapon 2 again. Let's give that Ozu film a shot. You haven't seen almost any of his films. Like, you need to start getting down that rabbit hole.
But you need your Joe Pesci.
But that's the thing. Like, it also the whole thing hinges on your luck. Because if you're intrepid and you get lucky and you like something that you gave a shot to, then you're going to be encouraged to give another thing a shot. But if you have a bad experience, especially back-to-back bad experiences with being, trying out new things and being a little more adventurous, then you're going to go back to your old ways again. So luck has a big part to play, but maybe also just kind of putting your best foot forward as far as like, would I like this movie? Maybe read a blurb, Rotten Tomato score. I don't know, whatever it is, whatever your barometer is to see if you could get in to something new and be rewarded for your efforts. But yeah, I don't know. It's funny because I used to think guilty movie pleasures just had to be cheesy, but then I found out like guilty pleasure movies could be amazing filmic efforts too. It could be the biggest budget Hollywood movie you could think of. It could be Titanic. It could be your guilty pleasure movie, right? But it's funny that has shifted for me. But I do need to get to be a little more adventurous. I think I need to kind of throw my old ways to the side and say, like, just kind of get. That's how we discover the great thing. That's how I discovered Game of Thrones. I gave it a shot. Totally.
The thing is that barriers are lower than ever, so you have to be more persnickety. It's not to say bad things weren't on. There was bad TV since the 50s and bad movies since the 20s and even before that. I mean, absolutely. It's not hard to make bad art. It's just the barrier to entry is so low and the need for content is so high that so much stuff slips by the goalie. And also so many things are released and then kind of abandoned, which is why I got to say 1899 came up before, and it's no insult. Like, I'm not trying to be a dickhead, but I saw people talking about that show, and there are a few people that will not be named were saying about that show, not like just people I follow on Twitter, just being like, oh, this is like one of the greatest shows I've seen in a long time and stuff. And I watched it. I'm like, this show sucks. Like, straight up. And it made me kind of mad. First of all, I'm never going to listen to what those people have to say again, because I'm like, I don't know what the fuck you were talking about. Second of all, I was like, damn, and Micah did too, because we did it over a few nights. I'm like, we wasted this time with this garbage that was so bad that it got canceled. So even if you watch it and liked it, you're never going to get the resolution to it anyway. Mm-hmm. And so at the very least, my whole thing is to I kind of just wait and see, especially with TV. I'm just kind of wait and seeing. People are like, you got to watch Mandalorian. You got to watch this. I'm like, it's not going anywhere. I'll just wait. One day, maybe I'll get to it. I'm not going to invest myself in things that are not very good or going to get canceled or whatever. So I wanted to just throw that out there. But the three movies that came to mind for me, guilty pleasure movies, and I would define this. These have all come up before. I identified as this on other shows, another show that I've done at some point for sure. But so I'm sorry if it's redundant for anyone, but I identify these movies as movies that I would be judged for liking, but that I think are good. Now, there are movies that people would look at to me and probably be like, is that a guilty pleasure? Like Labyrinth. Is that a guilty pleasure movie? And I'm like, no, that's not a guilty pleasure movie. Labyrinth is demonstrably amazing. If you don't understand Labyrinth, you're deficient. Like, I don't know what else to say to you about that. Or if someone, so a movie like that, where I'm just like, no, if you don't understand Willy Wonka, one of my favorite movies of all time, like, is that a guilty pleasure movie? It's like one of the most brilliant films ever made. No, it's not a guilty pleasure movie at all. should have won an Academy Award for how good it is. So I'm differentiating the movies in that way. But the movies that come to mind for me, You've Got Mail, number one. You've Got Mail is an awesome movie. And I think why I like it is because I'm a little nostalgic for it. It came out when I was early in high school. So it's just a nostalgic time. And it's very much about the mid to late 90s internet. And it's awesome. I mean, just from that, they're using AOL, they're using Instant Messenger. It's a big ad for AOL, basically. And Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan. Parker Posey's in it, and Dave Chappelle's in it. And so it's a weird movie. And it's about a bigger bookstore coming into New York City and then like kind of subsuming the smaller bookstore. And so and it's a romantic comedy about the two owners of these businesses and how they kind of fall in love with each other or whatever. I really dig it. I love You've Got Mail. That's a definite guilty pleasure movie for me because I think when I say that, people are like, what are you telling? You've Got Mail.
No, that movie is legit good.
But I think it's a really, really cute movie. And back in the day when they would, syndicate and put movies on TV, I used to watch that movie. I've probably seen that movie a bunch of times. The second one that comes to mind for me, and this movie I think is easily the best of the three I'm going to talk about, but people would still judge it, I think, because they don't really quite get it, is Clueless. Clueless is an exceptionally funny movie. And I think a lot of people, both when it came out in the mid 90s and today, and in that space between, can't quite get through it or can't quite see through what it is that makes it fun. And it's just an authentically, I think, hysterical look at mid 90s California and this very alien world to us in New York. And these girls, unlike any you've ever really seen in your entire life. And I really think Clueless is a special film from that era. But I think people look at the box art or they think of Alicia Silverstone or whatever, and they're like, oh, this sucks or it's not. But I'm like, no, dude, this movie's legitimately funny and it's heartwarming and interesting. And Paul Rudd's in it.
Yes, that's right. It's a period piece now.
It's definitely a period piece. And Paul Rudd, I mean, it's kind of weird because Paul Rudd is like her stepbrother, is Cher's stepbrother, but he's kind of into her and she's in high school. It's kind of an interesting movie, but for people that don't know, it's about basically like kind of high society LA teenagers that go to high school together and their travails and all of that. But it's funny because of how detached from reality, hence the name Clueless that they are, because they're so moneyed and inoculated from reality. And it's Stacey Dash is awesome in it. She's really funny. There's a lot of good performances in it. The guy we always quote where it's like, you fell for one of the great blunders. He plays their teacher in it. I can't remember that guy's name, but
what is his name? He's
awesome. I love that guy. That guy's a great character actor. He's awesome. And then the third one that came into mind for me is Legally Blonde, which I think came out in 2001. I saw this movie in the movie theater. This movie, so I had a girlfriend for a couple of years in high school. And her name's Megan. We never had any falling out or anything. We've always been friendly with each other. She's married and has 3 kids and whatever. And we talk like once in a blue moon. But this movie will always remind me of her because we went and saw it together and she loved this movie. But actually, in looking back at it and having seen it in the past, it's several times since then, and intentionally going and watching it, I'm like, this movie's pretty funny. It's like a good revenge tale if you can see through all of the trappings of 2000 and 2001 and all of the fashion and the cell phone technology and the computers and all of that. And who's interesting in this one is Luke Wilson. Well, Luke Wilson is the main character.
That's
one of the main characters in it.
Yeah, I love him.
And he's funny as hell. So yeah, it's just about like this girl that goes to high school with this guy and she's like in love with him, and they break up or whatever. He goes to Harvard, leaving her behind, and so she gets into Harvard and like basically like to stalk him. It's kind of like Felicity a little bit, that show Felicity from the late 90s.
I never made that connection. You're right.
But it's a funny version of Felicity. Like Felicity was a little bit of a disturbing version of Felicity in and of itself. So those are the 3 movies I would say were my fundamentally guilty pleasure movies, where, again, I have other movies where people would think they were guilty pleasures, but they're not. These are movies where I would embrace the guilty pleasure, even though I would contend they're actually good. Especially, I would say Clueless. Like, I would think Clueless is the best of those movies, in my opinion.
It's a great movie, classic. And, shout out to Reese Witherspoon. She's got a lot of charisma, that one. I really always liked her.
Yeah, she's awesome.
She's so good.
No, she is. She's and there was a sequel to Legally Blonde. I never saw it, but there was a sequel to it. That was Luke Wilson taking the money, no doubt. But I'm glad he did.
That's true. He's awesome. He's undersung. I love
He's
Owen
great.
Wilson too, but Luke's the man.
He's great. We got to do Bottle Rocket at some point.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yep.
Yeah, I'll
Good
knock
shit.
that. All right. Well, does that satiate the topic for you, Dag?
Love it. Loved hearing your guys' picks. I feel encouraged. I'm going to try to be a little bolder. No Rocky 3 for me tonight.
Rocky 4, dude. I'm surprised that you cut Rocky 4 out of there.
I watched Rocky 4 a couple of nights ago.
Oh, okay, good. Because I was going to say, I contend Rocky 4 is the best one. Yeah.
It's really good. Rocky 4 is really good,
one?
but the first two have substance. 3 is where it starts crossing over into cheese with Mr. T and Hulk
Mr.
Hogan.
T. Yeah, that's where my band's name Paper Champ came from.
That's right. I was thinking about that the other day.
He's like, yo, Paper Champ rock or whatever. You know, he said, actually, we have Ramon and I, my best friend, have a very specific Rocky 3 joke that no one would understand. And you might understand just in your mind. We always say to each other, woman. Because that's you know when Mr. T is like attacking Rocky and his wife
outside the art museum.
Yeah. So we're like, hey, woman.
Hey, woman. So good. But no more Rocky for me. I'm gonna dip my toe into uncharted waters. I'm not. I don't know.
Is that a hint for what's to come on Knockback? Uncharted waters?
I mean, we have. Oh, I like it.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
We're doing the old SNES game Uncharted Waters based on the cartoon. Remember that cartoon about the pirates or whatever?
Wait, you're thinking of Secret of Dark Water?
Is that what it was? Secret of Dark Water.
Secret of Dark Water. Is that what it was called?
I don't know what it was.
Something like that. I know what you're talking about. Yeah, I remember that because I was at that age of trying to be excited by cartoons still, and I was like, I'm not really into this.
Fair enough.
Yeah. All
right, let's get the hell out of here, my friends. It was good to be with you guys.
Super fun.
Micah, thank you for taking the time to be with us. You're very welcome here.
Thanks, Micah.
Yeah, this is very fun.
Yeah, I hope you had a good time. I was telling her we had a technical issue before, so I was just talking to her for a few minutes, and I'm like, people are going to complain that Micah didn't talk enough on this show. I'm telling you right now. I'm burying it at the end of the show to tell you what's going on here.
No, she did. You did an awesome job. I think you did great.
Thank you. I'm very nervous.
Really?
No, you did it.
It doesn't read at all.
No, it doesn't read at all. And I also told her, like, we're live to tape. It doesn't matter if you mess up. There's nothing to be worried about. Let's go walk the dogs when we're done here. Dustin?
Yeah.
My friend?
Yes.
Good day to you.
Thank you.
Good day.
Thank you, Dustin.
Yeah, thanks.
Great job.
I gotta decide. I'm on my own tonight. Holly's gone. Do I order pizza after I had Chipotle yesterday?
Oh, I thought you were gonna get both tonight. I'd say get both tonight.
Oh, both tonight. Hell yeah, dude.
Yes.
Do you want to get Chipotle? Yes. Pizza? Yes.
Dude, I did get a card. I got a card in the mail from Papa John's that says, we can do better than that. Apparently my last order, too slow in their mind.
Oh, that happened to us with Domino's.
Cheese pizza.
That's so interesting. Domino's did the same thing for us, although they really were slow one day. Like I called them after like 45 or 50 minutes, because you know how they have the pizza tracker?
Yeah.
And I'm like, you guys have been checking the quality for 45 minutes. And he's like, oh, it's leaving now. And like, and then I got an email.
Checking that quality.
And then I got an email a couple hours later where it was basically like, you have an option. I didn't ask for this. They were just like, you can have a free 2 medium pizza or like 20% off your next order. So I was like, I'll just do the 20% off because we like to get a lot of toppings and go fucking nuts.
Oh yeah.
Go absolutely fucking bonkers with it.
Guys, quick Chipotle story on the way out. Very quick. Couple of months ago in Chipotle, went like 7:30 at night. Nobody was in there. Went to the counter, ordered my food. The guy's like, I'm sorry, we could only do online orders right now.
What?
And I was like, wait, what? And he was just kind of saying the same thing over and over again. Like he was stonewalling me. So I sat down at one of the tables. There was nobody in there. Ordered on my phone and went and picked up the food. And he watched me do the entire thing.
Unbelievable.
It was the craziest shit.
POS must have been broken or something, right?
I have no idea.
You have to assume.
He could have said
there's some method to the madness. Are they one of the companies too that doesn't take cash anymore? I feel like they were.
I don't know.
I might be making that up.
Dustin will find out tonight after Papa John's. He'll head over.
Dude,
to
I use
Chipotle.
Apple Pay.
Oh, okay.
Smart.
Wow, how sophisticated.
Wow, yeah, I know. The old touchless payment kicking in.
You're a bachelor tonight. I want both things. I want Mexican and pizza.
Damn. Chipotle 2 days in a row and pizza. I might die. but I'll die happy and I'll die as I lived.
Fair enough. Well, on that note, let's get out of here.
I love it.
Thank you guys for your love, kindness, and support. Appreciate you. See you next time for more Constellation. Till then, goodbye.
See ya.
Constellation is a product of Last Stand Media and Colin's Last Stand LLC and is proudly recorded in the USA. The show was conceived by and is directed and hosted by me, Colin Moriarty. My co-host is my brother, Dagan Moriarty. The show is produced by Last Stand's executive producer, Dustin Furman, and is edited by associate producer, Ben Smith. All Last Stand theme music is by Ramon Narvaez, and all of our graphics and logos are by Dagan Moriarty. As you know, all of Last Stand Media's podcasts, including Constellation, are fan-funded on Patreon at patreon.com/laststandmedia. The following names are at the producer level on Patreon, our highest support tier, and we're infinitely grateful for your thoughtful and kind contributions to our independent endeavor.